Hello and welcome to the Silent Evil Podcast. I'm Spencer Scott Holmes.
And I am Cameron.
And we are coming back with another little indie survival horror game, one that both struck our fancy. And then when Cameron mentioned, he's like, hey, I'm picking it up. I'm like, I'm doing the same then too, because I looked at this ever since it popped up, and I'm like, man, I always wanted to play it. And we're going with Conscript, which is the World War I trench battling top-down view. Literally, if you took Resident Evil, threw in a little bit of Silent Hill, and combined it with the old school Metal Gear 1 and 2, not Metal Gear Solid, but MSX Metal Gear, that's what you sort of get here. And it's a fantastic combo. I mean, this game, so awesome. The story's great. The graphics are cool. The brutality that you see throughout it, and the only thing, if there's only like one little minor complaint, if anything, is the game is quite long. Way longer than you would think for an indie game. Especially for the fact that, there's like one core creator, and there's a couple other people in there you see in the credits, but for the most part, it's one main person. Like, man, is this game, it goes on, but it's one of those ones, I'll say, it goes long, but it doesn't go like so bad long that you're like, oh, geez, come on, just get with it. You see that sometimes in RPG games where you kind of go, at 25 hours, you were good. But then you felt like you needed to throw another 10 more hours in there, and nobody needed that extra 10 hours. We were done. Now we're just dragging, And sometimes I feel in indie games that sometimes is kind of, I always say there's kind of like three little sins that sometimes indie game creators can kind of make. And one is sometimes they make a game way too ridiculously long, and this one has, once again, I'm not saying it's in that kind of bad a category, but you do see that. Two is, of course, they can make games way too ridiculously hard. We see some of those games out there where it's just like, it just feels like it's like a 12-year-old. Like, I want to make a game so brutally hard that like nobody can make it. It's those kids that make stupid Mario like maker levels and stuff like that. And like the levels, like literally, like they timed everything out just enough that they like, I know how I can get the end, or they hide like a secret feather, but you like literally can't be. It's like that's not good level design. That's terrible. Right. That's terrible level design. I know you think you made a really hard level, but you just made a really dumb one. And then the other third one too, I always notice with certain indie games is that they'll literally like carbon copy a game that they like too much that it's like, why would I want to play this one? I literally have a good version of it already.
Right. Yeah, I think the Conscript, like right off the bat, within your first like 5 minutes of the game, the amount of atmosphere that is surrounding your character in this place that he's in, because it's the Battle of Verdun, it's 1916, you're a French soldier, and like the entirety of the point of the game is like, I need to find my brother, and it just drops you into scenario with just that in mind, need to find Pierre or whatever. And I think the thing that got me excited right from the very get-go is as soon as you enter into the trenches, you talk to your lieutenant and he's like, to the front lines, go, and like, you need to go. And like, when you break through that door and you walk into the first area or whatever, and off in the corner of the screen in another trench that you can't get to, you see a guy laying on the ground just writhing in pain, bleeding out, with a medic over him, just pumping on him, trying to keep him alive, trying to this, that, and the other. And you take a few steps forward to like get a closer look at it, and then just a mortar just comes down and just turns into smoke. The dust is just flowing around and whatnot. Everything goes dead quiet, and then the dust settles, and those two people are just gone. And then it's just like nothing to do but move forward, I guess, and like that's how the game starts, and it's just pure brutal. I was so taken aback at like how real it is, even though that it is this top-down pixelated, like survival. Like you can put it into a horror category, I guess, to an extent, but no, just right off the bat, the number one thing that got me was just its tone that it took, and the initial steps of its story, were really, really good. I think that, it being set in the trenches of World War I, it's kind of a conflict that you don't really see too often in video games that I really know about. Like, there's been a couple like the new Amnesia game takes place in World War One trenches or whatever. Granted, that is actual like what am I trying to say? There's like a monster, you know, in it or whatever. So it's supernatural, I guess, you know. Whereas this game is just grounded in reality, and like the horror of the game is the war surrounding you, and it's just the over oppressive tones of, you know, like the Germans are coming, you know, like it's wild.
Well, that's what I think is actually kind of one of the coolest things about this is game is a full-blown survival horror game, but it doesn't have to pull any supernatural cards. It doesn't have to put any bioterror in there or anything like that. It's just like, no, this is legitimate, real life stuff, and this is why it's so scary, is because it is pure real, and it did happen, and you know, things like this were, you know, totally based off true stories in a sense, you know, just put together into this. So I think that's what makes it kind of neat, because when you do think about it, very rarely it's like, do you play a survival horror game and is the stuff kind of like realistic, you know what I mean? And it's not saying that's a bad thing. Most of the time it's a monster, or it's a bioweapon, or it's something created, you know. I mean, there's other games out there you can play. Like I've always used Tomb Raider as an example, and you know, the fact that, you know, that game, I always think Tomb Raider 1, if you don't think that's a survival horror, I was like, you have not been played in some of those areas where you turn around and there's some gorilla there attacking you and whatnot, or you're being chased down by a giant grizzly bear and so on like that. Like, that's like pure terror, but that's, I guess, close to being like sort of a realistic kind of scenario. Right. But yeah, here I just think the setting's cool, and it's really kind of a bummer that there's not that many World War I games just out there in general. I mean, it was kind of a big deal when Battlefield did the Battlefield 1. And I thought that one was great. You know, I know some people didn't like it too much, but I'm like, man, I thought that story was awesome. You know, it had 5 different like runs that you went through, you know, just from being like the French to being like, then they had sort of a Lawrence of Arabia section. They had one where the Gallipoli and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, this is cool. It kind of covers the stuff that you get to use all the cool weapons that you normally never see. Because one thing I think that's really neat in World War I is that everybody's kind of, you have all this Industrial Revolution stuff coming together, and nobody really knows what's best yet. So everybody's at this very creative point of like, this is how I think the best way to make a machine gun is, and this is the best way to make, you know, a stabbing item, and this is the best way to make an artillery. And so everything almost has this like artistic kind of like overlay to it, where by World War II, things are very more dialed in. Like people kind of figured out, okay, this is how you're going to make it a little bit smoother. This is how you're going to make it work better, and so on like that. But they don't look nearly like the same way that, you know, items are. Like the stuff you see in World War I sometimes almost doesn't even look realistic. It looks like it came out of a fantasy book in a sense. Yeah, you know, there's like there's a picture that's like one of those mini pictures they have, but there's that one where it's like there's a dude riding like a horse with like a gas mask on, and he's got a big old hat, and he's got the, you know, like literally a melee weapon, and he's got a big old huge machine gun. It just looks like a guy out of like literally like a fantasy, like, you know, role playing game. Right. It's like no, that's a real soldier right there. You know, just like that's how like barbaric is, and so on. And it is one of those funny wars too, where there's like the ones where there's like stories where it's like, oh, the tragedy and all the kind of stuff from there. And then there's the stories of people that are like, man, it was a gas. You should have been there. Like, there's a book, I can't remember what it is. I almost want to say it's called A Happy Odyssey, but it has Odyssey in the title. That's how I always kind of remember what it is. But it's a dude who was in like literally like 5 wars, and he thought it was the greatest thing ever. And he was in like 2 of them before World War I. And then he went to World War I, and when they were all said and done, and when he left, the reporter asked him like, so what'd you think of it? He's like, I thought I had a really good time there. And he like lost his eye in it, lost an arm and everything like that. And then he still goes and becomes a paratrooper in World War II at like age 52.
Insane. Because again, like the stories that are told in this game. So like on top of its overarching story, just the visual storytelling that it tells, the broken down building with, you know, like you walk into and like, you know, the side of the building is just completely crushed over or whatever. And you walk into that little area and there's like a picture on the ground of like a little baby and blah, blah, blah. And then you start to think like, oh God, like a family actually lived here. And, you know, like it's just like the visual storytelling that it has, the memos and notes and things that you find of just like people that have left, you know, fleeing for their lives because again the Germans are coming and you know, like things like that. Its tone is just so real. It felt heart-wrenching in a lot of situations in the game. Like and again, like it's so neat that a game doesn't have to have Unreal Engine 5 level, visual quality to tell, like a proper story, and like it actually like means something to me as the player, and like make me feel a certain way. I thought it was just super, super well done. But yeah, I think like even like just leading into the game before you even start, I think like the options that you have at the start of the game of choosing your difficulty, choosing like these couple different options that you have. So like right off the bat, like the game gives you like 4 difficulty options. Training, I'm going to just rate it off. So like training is the assisted mode where you get more health, more inventory slots. The recruit mode is reduced damage, abundance of resources. Soldier mode is the default standard difficulty. And then you have veteran, which is fewer resources, fewer inventory, more aggressive enemies. And then on top of that, you have these other options, which will toggle on if you're able to get an S tier rank or not. If you toggle these on, then you can't get S tier, but unlimited saves and checkpoints. So you can toggle those on and off. In my run, I started off on soldier difficulty and turned off unlimited saves and turned off checkpoints. And for anybody that is walking into this game for the first time, do not. Because bump that difficulty down and turn those things on, because yeah, we'll get into it.
Well, you started the game like a day before I did, and then you pretty much told me that, and I was like, yep, I know exactly what I'm doing. Boop, recruit, and I'm going to do those unlimited saves and difficulty. And I've kind of learned this a long time ago when it comes down to survival horror games, and this even can go for other games like action games like Devil May Cry and so on like that. It's like, you don't maybe need to go to like the total bottom, but you should go down to at least easy and then work your way back up, because with a survival horror game, a lot of times is there's already going to be so much challenge just with you not knowing where to go, with you solving puzzles, with you not knowing where enemies are and all that kind of stuff, that like even if it's on an easier mode and you may have more weapons and more health and so on like that, you're going to stumble into all kinds of other stuff that's already going to present enough challenge as is that I don't need to intensify it, Because we've all known people who, for some reason, love to start the game on the hardest difficulty, and then you watch them spend like 5 months trying to beat the game, and sometimes they never make it. And I'm like, I don't need to do that. I'm like, I got a lot of games I like to play, and then I appreciate the harder difficulty because I go through it on one run, and then you can come back again. You'll be like, okay, then I'll take the next one on, and then you build up. I mean, that was always I always called that was my Devil May Cry tactic. Is like you start low and you work your way up, and then you feel like you earn it each time you go through. You know, you're not just punishing yourself.
Yeah. The thing I will comment on though is that I will never claim to be a survival horror like veteran. I will get there through this podcast for sure, but I'll never claim that. But I will say that I think that if you are a fan of the genre and understand the way that these games operate and the way they work, I think that the difficulty soldier that I played on its normal default mode was actually decent. It was really good, but I am bad at survival horror, so I did that. So that's like the one comment I would say. New player, probably do the Spence thing, bump down to recruit, and do unlimited saves and checkpoints, because I don't think that any of those things would really take away from this game in the way that it's designed.
No, and I'll say, one, the checkpoints are actually quite few and far between. And they mostly actually only throw them in parts that you would just get totally screwed over with if you messed up. Like a lot of times, there's some boulders, a la Indiana Jones / Resident Evil 1. You'll see like the checkpoint appear right before then. And so mostly, because like the checkpoints come so rare in the game that when you see it, you're like, okay, something really bad's going to be around the corner. That's all that's all that's just told me, And so beyond that, I don't feel like it does. And then the unlimited saves, it's like, that's one of those ones like, hey, I feel like even back in the old Resident Evil days, it wasn't one of those ones like, man, boy, am I so excited to have these like limited like ink ribbons and so on like that. That's like one of those ones like, it's an interesting feature, and for the time period, it kind of adds to it, but like, I don't think that you're not losing anything if you put that on. And even when we saw our continued screens at the very end, I think I only had 10 more saves than you did. And it's only, sometimes I only save, it sounds weird, like if I have unlimited saves, it's like, sometimes you'll go and you'll switch your inventory around, you're like, well, I better save again, because I don't, just in case I die out here, I don't want to have to go through that again. A lot of times I call it's a time-saving thing, it's the way that I look at save states. It's like, save states is that thing that, it really is just a time saving mechanism. It's not really like you challenge or you cheat your way through or anything like that, because you still have to make that progress. You're just cutting off the parts that you've already done already. I don't have to go back and at least do that again over and over and over again.
Well, and I think what you can see in my totality of the amount of saves. So this game tracks your saves by the end of the game, and it gives you like an ending, kind of like RE style, time and how many times you saved, how many times you healed, how many enemies you killed, blah blah blah, all this type of stuff. At the end of it, and we'll get to it by the end of this episode, but by the end of it, Spence and I shared each other's ending screens, and I was at 49, and you were at like 62, 61, 62, something like that. So I think what that really says is like, yes, I did have a finite amount of saves that I could have, but finding saves in the general world of just exploration, the vendor always has saves every new chapter that you get, and every safe room that you come across always has 2 ink ribbons in it, always. Mm-hmm. So between all that, exactly what you were just saying, I fiddled with my inventory. I should probably save, because I really don't want to go through all that again. I don't want to combine all the stuff to get all the new ammos and this, that, and the other, and all the upgrades and all that crap. So I was a bit frivolous with my saves. I started to feel, and it only screwed me at the very end. Like literally right before the final area of the game, there's like an hour sprint that I had to do before I got to the final point of the game, and was praying at that point, because this was like at 11:30 last night. I was like, I gotta finish this game. And like, so I was like an hour and a half in or whatever. I was like approaching the final section, and I was like, please be a save point here so I could save my game and start again in the morning and actually finish it. And luckily that's what happened. But so even then, like, saves being finite really isn't a problem, I would say. Like, you would have to be saving a ton to run out, mm-hmm. or at least not have options to save, so yeah. So I mean, like, those are just a couple of the things, like, just right off the bat that the game tosses at you. And then, like, again, like, story wise, I had mentioned, you play as, this character André, World War One, type soldier or whatever. You're looking for your brother Pierre. You understand that he's in another battle nearby, but he may be coming closer to you or whatever. So you need to go find him. And that's pretty much where this game starts you off at. And then, like I said, you get talked to by your lieutenant. He wants you to go to the front lines, and you basically like start off in this like supply trench area or whatever. And you need to head north and go through this, bunker area, and then end up in the front lines. And then this is where, after seeing the medic and the dude on the ground exploding, and, like that being like a shell shock to you as a player, you progress further into this zone, and you kind of go through a screen or two, and then all of a sudden you're like in this circular arena. And this was like the very first night that I played, and I think this was my first text to you, was like a picture of like what had happened, and then like a text of like, this just happened, please pick this game up, we need to play this, because like it's amazing. But basically, you enter this arena, and it locks off both sides of the arena to where you can't leave. It gives you a melee weapon, a spiked mace, and it gives you a bandage. And then it's just like, here's an enemy soldier, kill him. And like, oh, dude, the combat in this game is so brutal, but I think it's so well done. Mm-hmm. I like that. So with melee, and this is with any weapon really, but like in this encounter with melee, it's like so for me, I'm playing on controller, so I'm holding left trigger to ready up the weapon. My character locks in place, he can't move, but his arm starts to go back, and then it goes to like full swing, and you like see your reticle come down, and then you execute, and then you do a hard swing that way. Or you can like hold the trigger briefly, and your character's arm starts to go back, and then you just do a bunch of fast swings and whatnot. So like, depending on, it's all context sensitive based off the amount of time that you're holding that trigger, based off how hard you're actually going to hit. And there's a lot of added strategy to that. I do also enjoy the dodge roll side of things. I think that it added an interesting mechanic to be able to get around enemies, and thank God that the enemies can't body block you in this game, because you can phase right through them with the dodge roll, which is super nice, especially later on. But
Yeah, you would get really screwed if you could get blocked.
oh yeah,
If you rolled and you bounce back, you know what I mean? It'd be like, oh,
Yep.
because there's some moments where it's just you would get trapped, but like that roll kind of gets you out of like a lot of like sticky situations, you know. Though some of those guys will have reach more than you expect. You're like, how'd that guy got me? You know what I mean?
Yep.
Or I swung first, damn it.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, because at first it took me a moment because like that charge thing, I kept thinking I had a charge of R2, and so like I'd be like, dang it, don't swing already. And like, oh no, it's you charge by the holding L2, and then you could swing down. And then once I kind of figured that out, it's like, okay, so this game's all about clubbing guys over the back of the head. You know what I mean? And that would be like the thing you do is you sort of Metal Gear sneak around, because if you get the guy from behind, you almost do like twice as much damage. You know,
Okay.
I don't know. I don't even know what the exact stats are, but like you pretty much can take out the majority of the guys from one good club to the back of the head. But if you club them from the front, it might take about 2, 3, 4, depending on like what kind of guy you're fighting.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
some of those guys way later on, like there are some of those guys with like some of the rifle guys. It's like you would sit there and you'd just be clubbing the guy over and over again. Now, granted, if the rifle guy's by himself, you can just kind of just beat the living daylights out of him. Because that's the interesting thing about this game is that like it really kind of shows that like you have guns, and some of the soldiers that you battle have guns, but guns aren't necessarily the best weapon, and it kind of treats it that way. It's like, yeah, they can be dangerous, but they're slower, and you know they're almost like not as brutal. It's like, so you get kind of used to like almost like you get more scared of a guy running at you with like a club than a guy running at you with a gun. If a guy runs with a rifle, you're like, whatever, I'll go up there and just smack the living daylights out of him. But the guy running at me at the club, okay, I gotta get prepared. Gotta do a little dodge roll, you know, club him over. Or, you know, I get used to like, you'd get far enough away, you just wait for it, bam! And then you roll away and wait for it, bam! Oh, he's down. Okay, good. And as long as there's not too many guys building up, but they have these, we were talking about the front area, and they have these like throughout multiple of the chapters where, you know, the whole point is like, you got to get back to the front. You know what I mean? Back to the front. That's a continual thing. We're going to lock the doors on you guys, and you guys got to fight the good battle till you make it. You know, this is for France, damn it. And as you're out there and stuff like that, you are kind of like, oh, let's survive, and you keep hearing the whistle go, and that just means more Germans are running up and over the trench. And then sometimes you can get like the machine gun turret, and you can start blasting the guys and so on. But eventually they'll throw some nerve gas at you or something there. Which the cool thing is, once later on you have the gas masses, you can like, throw all the nerve gas you want. I'm not leaving the turret.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of really, really interesting things just right off the get-go. So like Sven said, you know, like mounted turrets. I mean, there's some of those just kind of randomly scattered throughout this game, mostly in the combat zones, like the front lines and whatnot. You have the very classic video gamey red barrel that explodes when you shoot it, you know, type stuff too, you know. And
I'm glad that they didn't allow the melee weapons to blow that up, because I clubbed a few of those barrels thinking that, because you have other barrels that you can break open and find items. Because this game is, I definitely think that the person who made this game was extremely into Resident Evil 4. A lot of the elements in it are very, very Resident Evil 4-y. That's like, it's more Resident Evil than it is anything else, or Resident Evil 4 than it is like other Resident Evil games. Like just the design and everything about it, you know, with the hint of Metal Gear thrown over the top, you know. And sometimes I even kind of wonder if the Metal Gear stuff's more just like a hint, or I don't know if he was really into, you know, Metal Gear 2 MSX or anything like that.
I very much believe so. I think it's just like apparent in its level design. Just the way that, you know, everything, well, at least like in trenches and whatnot, in the town that we go to a little bit later, into like Fort Vaux and whatnot, everything has like hard right angles and whatnot. And it that was like one of the first things I texted you to, was just like, it's kind of got this like, I'm not gonna say it's Metal Gear, but it's kind of got this like Metal Gear vibe to it, where it's like, yeah, if you run around a corner and that soldier's chasing after you or whatever, and like you just sit there and you hold your club up, you know, and you're like waiting for him to round this corner, you just bash his brains in, you know, like, I don't know, it felt very much like running around a snake. And, you know, granted, Snake has his pistol or whatever, you know, you run around the corner and you wait until they come around the corner, you know, ping, you shoot them once and then you run away, you know. But yeah, I mean, like its inspirations are very apparent, that it's it's Resident Evil 1, and I think in a lot of the design, especially when we start talking about puzzles and key elements and whatnot, has a lot of that going for it. I think again, its tone and atmosphere is just like utterly dreadful, but for good, like a good reason, you know. Kind of gives it that Silent Hill style, you know, like to it or whatever, where you just have this feeling of unease nonstop throughout your entire play experience. And then you know, like we we're just saying, you know, like just Metal Gear in general, I think in terms of just like the way that you path through the levels, the way that you can like hide around corners, the slight amount of sneaking elements that are actually in this game, combat, you know, and whatnot too. So, but yeah, I think that it has a very solid design just from the get-go. And again, I think that any new player will recognize that within your first 15 to 20 minutes of playing this game, you're just like, it hooked me immediately. And I just continue. I didn't want to put it down, you know?
No. Yeah, you just keep going and so on like that. You know, you'd almost have to kind of like, okay, I guess I'm calling it a day. I got to a save point here. That seems about right. But no, just the combat itself is really good. And even like the guns, because I didn't use the guns for like the first half of the game almost. It's just I pulled my classic survival horror thing that I was going to hoard as much ammo as possible until I really needed to use it. And because the melee weapons were so good, like when you first get the pistol and everything like that, I'm like, it's kind of like crap compared to like a shovel over the head, you know what I mean? And because they do the thing where when you have to aim, it's like you almost have to pull the gun out and sort of aim, so you have to have that distance, which is actually kind of cool because it gives it a little bit more of a realistic feeling that you can't just quick draw everything. And you know, you upgrade the guns just like Resident Evil 4, which I always love that. You know what I mean? And so, you know, you get the pistol, then you get a rifle and so on like that. And the rifle's kind of cool too, but it's like one shot. So you got to kind of like shoot and then go over, reload, boom. Yeah, reload, and then do that. So it adds a little bit of dread and stuff there, which is kind of a neat one too.
So funny enough, my primary gun I used majority of the game was that rifle. So I didn't realize, I mean, because within your first couple chapters of any given game, you know, like you start with the pistol, you get the next best thing. You're like, oh, that thing's badass compared to this old crappy pistol that I got earlier. I'm just going to upgrade that. And again, with limited, you know, finite amount of resources to be able to do it. By the end of the game, I had a fully decked out gun like that. But with those last few encounters, good luck. Talk about dodge rolling.
Yep.
Like, you know, but no, I really enjoyed that too, just because like bolt action like just feels really good in this game. Just for like, you know, you're aiming down sights or whatever, you're waiting for your reticle to kind of like slow up and target, you know, to do. I don't know if it's based off damage or not, but like, or if it's accuracy, but like when your reticle is like way wide when you first pull out or whatever, and you shoot somebody, comparatively to when it's like concise down after you're holding for a minute, you know, when you're concise down on with this gun at like full damage or whatever, after I upgraded the full amount of damage on it, it would take 2 or 3 shots in like the quick mode, you know, just like pull up and shoot real quick, you know, compared to like physically aiming, letting the reticle come all the way down. It was typically a one shot if I allowed that to happen. So what I would have to do, especially with the melee based combatants and whatnot, is like basically bait them into doing a heavy attack, you know, to give me enough time to do a dodge roll away, stand up, ready my gun, let it ready, and then pull the trigger after, you know, the reticle shrinks down to its normal size or whatever. So majority of my play experience was with that rifle. And I think that's probably also another reason why I died so much, you know? So
the rifle is what I use a lot too, because one, I think they give you more rifle ammo than anything else, because that's like the only ammo you'll pick up from like killing guys and so on that.
You're still picking it in chapter 6.
Yeah, you know, and well, the rifle too is also just like clubbing guys over the head from behind. It was just going up behind him and shooting him in the back with the rifle was like always generally a good guaranteed one hit kill. So I did a lot of that. And this game does there's one thing you can do to sort of cheat the game just ever so slightly is you can shoot a guy, and then if you see the other guys running at you and there's too many of them, you just run out of the room and run back in it, and it totally restarts the patterns. So that kind of, I would do that every once in a while if there was like a bunch of guys in a room, or if it was really dark, I'd be like, okay, bang, run out, run back in. Okay, go get the next guy. Bang, run out, run back in. Go get the next guy. And you could kind of bait him that way, you know, because I kind of wondered at first, I'm like, is the guy going to chase me into the next room? Because that would kind of suck if that was the case,
Right.
you know. I definitely think that would add to the terror in someone like that, and just the fact that, like, oh no, you thought you were going to restart this area? Nope.
Yep.
I really think it's just more of a maybe just a game build design that they kind of had to restart. I feel like probably one of those ones, if you really could control everything, you might have it there, but probably just with whatever physics are running in it.
I think that maybe certain enemy types could follow you through doors, like the big hulking dudes, you know, with the axes, or like, you know, the flamethrower guys or whatever, like deep way later on enemies or whatever. Like maybe if they added a feature like that, because I was thinking the same thing, you know, like the very first time I started to get chased. So like, let me explain this for a minute. The first time you see the big hulking German dude with the maced club, and he's like, you know, all pixelated and crazy looking, but he just does this just guttural roar of, you know, and just, dude, that is terrifying. You know, like, and you know,
he looks like the dark, scary version of the football player in Super Mario World. That sounds like a weird 100%. Thing, but that's what it kind of remind me of. And he comes running at you at full speed.
Yeah, no, 100%.
And I think you actually fight one of them literally the first time you're at the front too. It's kind of like the very last, like, because I remember it's like, oh, so okay, there's a beyond just the riflemen and just the, you know, the standard melee dudes. Here's a guy coming in at you that's kind of like a boss.
Yeah, because the first time that happened, that was another hook point for me, was just like, oh God, like here's the scary part of the game, you know, like, because up until that point, it's very much just dread, you know, of just like you're walking through muddy trenches, everything's dirty as hell, there's bodies laying everywhere, there's a body part over here, seeing like all the dead bodies and whatnot, like in the trench lines and all that. Again, just tonally, like it nails everything. And I really enjoyed all the designs of all the different soldiers that you go up against, like whether even like the French soldiers, like in the few scenarios that you actually do have friendlies around and whatnot, just this overarching just depression that is just soaking into everybody's soul as you're walking around and you're talking to them, and they're just terrified of being there, you know, and whatnot, down to like actual enemy design. So you have like German soldiers that are like, you know, just typical trench, you know, shovel, you know, wielders. And then you have like, you know, dudes that have rifles, and you got other guys that are like big hulking monster, you know, type dudes that, you know, take forever to take down and whatnot. And like all of it combined, especially when it starts tossing multiples of these enemies at you and whatnot, and you're having to deal with it on top of the, you know, the slow paced combat with, you know, having to ready up before you fire, or having to ready up before you, like, you know, hit them with the mace or whatever. Combat in general, I think it took me a minute to wrap my head around it. But once that click moment happened, I was like, dude, like, this is cool. Like, this feels good, you know? And even though you can cheese it, because unfortunately, like this happened to me very much in chapter 4, where you do run through the door just to reset the room over and over again. It is cheesy, but at the same time, like there's just certain scenarios that you just can't overcome. Like, you know, you're looking at your health bar going like, I can take 2 hits and probably be okay, but like, I'm just going to run out this door and reset the room, you know, because like, why not, you know, just to progress. So.
Well, because it doesn't take much to just get kind of screwed over, and then you get about 3 clubs, and you're like, yep, and I'm dead, you know? Because that is kind of one of those ones. It's like, a lot of times it's like, I'd be like, I'm doing good, and you just kind of, you mess up once, and then it's just like, and I kind of just screwed myself over, and now I'm either dead or very low on health, you know? So, you know, you sometimes got to kind of use whatever tactics you possibly can, and I think that's kind of part of it anyways, you know? And, this game's one of those ones, too, where it uses a lot of, like, those elements throughout the years of survival horror games. You know, and of course, it has a lot of Resident Evil 4 stuff. You can upgrade weapons. It's got the merchant and everything like that. But it also uses the Resident Evil 3 elements of being able to combine ammo and make health, you know, and all that kind of stuff there, which is kind of neat. Though, it's funny, you'll combine all this stuff together, and it's like, cool, I got 3 shotgun shells out of that. That felt like a lot of effort I just did and resources to only get that many. You know, and I thought it was like, maybe it'll be a little bit more randomized. No, it was always 3. You never got more than that.
Oh, yeah. Yep. See, but I think that plays into this game's design, too, of what you were talking about, that, like, I mean, towards the end, you absolutely need guns, like 100%. But
Yeah.
similar to you, and you can see it in our kill count too at the end. Like I had significantly less kills than you did.
Yeah, like 100 less.
Right. I think part of that is,
And I'm assuming the rats don't count.
Yeah, yeah. Because part of that I think is the end of chapter 2, chapter 4, chapter 6, the battles that ensue there, and the choices that we made that were vastly different. That's probably part of it, but another of it is like I really didn't kill much of anything up until about chapter 4. I mostly ran past everything, or tried to sneak past, so like I was very stealthy majority of this game, up until the point where it's like, oh no, I'm running through this zone over and over and over. Like I have to kill these guys, because they're just a nuisance otherwise. Yeah. But as Spence was just alluding to, is that when you do make those decisions to start killing soldiers, you have a whole other threat to deal with on top of this now. So you got dead bodies on the ground that persist and they don't go away. And slowly but surely over time, rats start to show up. And talk about the worst, hardest enemy in this game are those stupid rats. Because they gang up on you, man. Like,
well, that's the thing, because it's like, speaking of another element, is they have the burning bodies thing in here from Resident Evil the remake and so on like that. And you get this note off the bat that talks about, like, this guy goes into details, like, oh man, there's these rats out here, like, and they're worse than a German or anything like that. He's like, I'd take a German with a club any days over one of these giant rats, And when I first saw that, I was like, okay, you see the little teeny rats kind of come up, and you're like, okay, whatever, that's just there, not a big deal. And after a while, they kind of turn to like bigger rats and so on like that. And they start feeding on the dead bodies that you've left around in there. And really, if there's just one or two rats, it's not that big of a deal. You just run up and just start swing, and they'll just run right into you and you'll just kill them. And there's a point where I was kind of like, okay, you can burn the bodies, but is it really that big of a deal? Like these rats are kind of not that much of a problem. The downfall gets to is if there's a bunch of bodies and you start getting like 7 rats, well, you can only swing at so many of them at a time because you'll take out one each hit. So that once they gang up on you, yeah, they can become kind of an issue, So there is a time and a place to definitely burn the bodies and so on like that. Though I will still say at the same time, the rats, there's a couple moments where they were bad, but I felt like they were almost like underplayed a little bit. Like I thought they were going to be more of a... I actually thought they were going to evolve for some reason one more level, because that memo talks about it like it was really bad. And I was like, okay, well, they're kind of like
the size of dogs or some shit.
Yeah. And I did also think, because they've always talked about that in World War I, one of the biggest issues in those trenches was the wolves would come in there. So I kind of thought in my mind the whole time, I'm like, there's going to be the rats, the little rats, they'll evolve into the big rats, and then there'll be wolves. Well, like, and I kind of thought that was going to be what it was. It was going to be like, if you really don't take care of this, the wolves come to eat the rats, and then the wolves are a really pain in the ass because they're fast and they're brutal and so on. And that never happened. And I was kind of like, oh, that was kind of a bummer, because I was kind of expecting that there. Because as I said, the rats, like, there's some moments in there where they're kind of a problem, but for the most part, it would just be like, yep, kill the rats. Like the fuel got to the point where I'm like, I just threw it back. Like, I didn't even pick it up sometimes because it just ended up taking up too much inventory space, and you had to carry the lighter. Because I will say that this game almost does give you a little bit too much crap to carry around. Like, I kept feeling like, God, you just gave me 3 key items. Well, let me go run back to the chest, throw it all in there, and then, okay, we'll go again.
Which I think definitely pads its length for sure. There's a lot of, there's very intentional level design things that are going on with your pathing based off keys. And then exactly what Spence just said, like the amount of items that are in this game. Granted, there's upgrades that you can get for your inventory system. You can expand your inventory. I think upwards of, was it 6 slots or something like that in total.
You get to max it out. You pretty much get whatever you start out with. You almost double it by the time it's all said and done. But you literally get one of those last packs, like way late in the game. It's like this would have came in handy earlier. Granted, we learned that there's a very sweet new game plus that we can get into later, but I know that was one of my biggest struggles, is like, and that's probably a lot of times why I also had more saves, because if I had to run all the way back, I guess I'm already here, I'll just save again, but like that would happen to me you have multitudes of guns, you got to carry melee weapons, you got key items, even just little things there. And since there's a lot of items in it, you know, it's like, yeah, Resident Evil has inventory management, but Resident Evil has probably half as many items as that's going through here. So it's not that big of a deal, where this game's really loading you up on a lot of stuff. And it's almost one of those ones that I will say, like, I don't mind the inventory management and so on like that, but this is one of those few games that probably could have one of those things where, like, maybe things like gems and all that stuff could be like Resident Evil 4 style, where it just like it goes in its own compartment. We don't have to worry about it.
Why not just have or even like, you know, playing to the game's strengths with its crafting system or whatever, but just like, what if I find a piece of leather and a drawstring, and then I can create a gem bag or something that just attaches to the side or something, you know, like gamify it for sure. But
or even have the guy sell me something like that I can kind of have if need be. Like, 'cause I always feel when it comes down to inventory management, I always feel like just make key items and keys and things like that. Like they all go into like a certain area where you can carry almost unlimited of them. Who cares? And the inventory management is more like, that's your ammo, your health, and that kind of stuff. Like, what do you want to take from there? You know, in this game, that could be the fuel for burning the bodies. That could be the grenades that you can kind of use to either blow up the rats and make sure that they don't come back, which is kind of cool. Or you can chuck a grenade too, you know, which gives it kind of double purpose. They even have a third item in there too, which I think it was another one of those ones where I thought was really cool, but it was kind of underutilized, is you can get barbed wire. And you can block certain areas so that Germans don't come in and like respawn in a sense. But there's only about 3 areas I noticed that really kind of happened. And it was another one of those ones where it was a cool idea, but I thought it was going to be like, oh, I better block these more often. Than it's like, no, they only respawn like once. And then if you kill them over again, it's like, well, that was it. That was as far as they got. Yeah,
there might be more, but the two that come to mind are exactly what you've already said. It's the fuel and the burning of the bodies of that feature, that mechanic, and exactly what Spence just said, like using barbed wire to block off sections of the trenches and whatnot, so soldiers don't show up, you know, later on. Both of those things you can totally do, and probably should for the achievements that come alongside them or whatever. But
did you get achievements for that? I didn't know.
So to date, I still haven't burned a body. I never did it. One, I didn't understand the mechanic, because like as soon as I got the lighter, I didn't realize that I had to use the fuel to burn the bodies. What I assumed that the fuel was is that so early on, and this is either in Act 1 or maybe Act 2, but early on when you go to the generator room and it talks about, you know, it's in the bunker on your way to the front lines. There's a generator in one of those rooms, and it's just like, oh, the fuel's fine and blah, blah, blah. So I just assumed that the power was going to go out at some point. So I banked up on fuel the entirety of the game and never really understood what that mechanic really was until way later on, where I happened to be carrying one, you know, interacted with the body, and it's like covering fuel or whatever. And I go, yes. And then lighter, you know, so that's how I understood the mechanic. But leading up to that point, I never really did. And it didn't really affect much. Like I had to deal with a lot more rats, I guess, but even then, like you sprint past them, you knock them out with melee, like you're good to go. One interesting mechanic about the rats that I noticed too, and I don't know if this was just me and being dumb or if this is just a game thing, but like if I'm holding a club, pickaxe, a shovel, whatever, like a breakable type melee weapon, it was really hard to hit the rats. But the unbreakable knife that you get, I ran with that thing the entirety of the game because it was my rat killer. Every single time I could hit the rats with it. But for some reason with the mace clubs or the, you know, like any of the breakable melee weapons, you can hit them, but like it's like you almost have to like physically like properly target them, because I would miss all the time. So I relied heavily on the unbreakable knife the entirety of the game, specifically for rats.
That's interesting, because I never had any, because I almost never used that knife. It mostly just sat in my drawer, because I just used like whatever, the shovel or the club or whatever that. And I didn't have a problem, because I would literally just stand about like 10 feet away from the rats and just go swing, 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 swing. And they would run into it and go, bam, dead, dead, dead. And it would be like, yep. And that's where I kind of learned early on. I'm like, it's not that big of a deal. I guess I don't really need to burn these bodies.
Yeah.
And you know, you bring up the burning the bodies. It's like probably if you didn't play a lot of Resident Evil 1, the remake one, that probably would not stand out a whole lot, because that memo kind of mentions it, but not like a whole lot. I felt like I just knew exactly what to do because of Resident Evil 1. It was like almost like, oh, and I was almost interested to see what are these going to turn into if I don't burn them. That was my kind of theory at first. I'm like, I was expecting some type of Crimson Head issue to come up because I wasn't burning these bodies. And then when I kind of realized it's like, oh, they're just slightly bigger rats. Yeah. It's just not worth my time to one, carry the lighter and the fuel that's going to take up all this extra space that I do not have, you know.
Yeah, because right from the get-go, I mean, like, I picked up the lighter, and I assumed that the lighter was going to be a light source originally. Like, oh, my torch is out. I have a lighter now, and it maybe be a little bit more than what, like is shown in default, when you don't have any kind of light whatsoever, but you still have like that little bit of light radius around your character. That's really what I thought the lighter was for. And when it wasn't
a little bit bigger radius.
Right. Just like something, to compensate for a headlamp, that's on a battery, that's on, finite amount of power, So that's initially what I thought that was. So yet again, here I am playing survival horror, not fully understanding mechanics, because the other one that got me, and this game has a phenomenal map UI, in my opinion.
Yes,
I love that you can move around this map and you can unlock doors, and like locked doors will still show up on your map as red, but it'll also tell you what key item you need. So when you're in your stash and you're in your safe room and you're like, so again, this is all going to kind of round back to where you're talking about inventory management, where I personally enjoy it. So when you're in your stash and you're looking at your map and you're like, you're making choices because you have such limited inventory of like, do I take this key item now and do this path to do this door, hopefully to get another key item so I can do this path to get this door? Or what if I take this item and go another path and go open this door? So there's like all these choices that are going through your head, as you're looking at this map. But again, like similar to last episode where I just straight up didn't have a map, this game, I realized I had a map, but I didn't realize that it has a toggle for room names for whatever reason. What's cool about it is that in my own head, as I'm running through the game, because I'm looking at the map and each room doesn't have a name associated with it, I'm putting names in my own head of just like, oh, this is the generator room, this is the blah blah blah, this is the medical room, yada yada. It took me until chapter 5 to figure out that, like, oh, because there's so many key items that are just like, in the pigeon room and blah blah blah, it's like, well, where is that?
I remember you sent me this revelation text, and you're like, dude, I just figured out that, like, you can toggle those things on. I'm like, I've been using that the whole time. I thought that was the biggest saving grace of this game, was that, like, the map is so good that for a survival horror game, I pretty much never got lost. I mean, there's a couple of parts you get turned around, but, like, you never get, like, bad lost where you're just running around like, where the hell do I go? There's always mostly like, yep, I haven't tried that door over there. Let's go try that again, and they a lot of times tell you the items and all this stuff, so you kind of can make this like mental note of what you might need next and so on. So I think that's kind of cool because that really allows for you to sort of try things. And there's only really a couple things in the game that can kind of get you a little bit screwy, but for the most part, that map is so good. So good.
It's so good. Yeah, and even like leading down to its like key design and whatnot, because the map is labeled per door of what key you need. Again, just like the amount of strategy that you can have, especially as a fresh blind playthrough, like not really knowing the game. The game does a phenomenal job of leading the player without physically holding your hand, just by giving you these tools. And I think it's so great,
Yeah, no, I think, and it's like, even when there's puzzles, what I like about them is mostly they're done well. It's not like there's just some random thing clear across the other side of the map that's supposed to be brought over to here. No. It's mostly, it's like it's in the same room, or like at least in the vicinity. You'll find a note. You'll find the information. Some of the locks are like one of those ones because you could kind of bully a couple of them. Because I remember there was one where it's like, it's the lock is when the dude's father died. I'm like, well, that probably means it's only in the last 10 years. Let me just go 1890, 1891, 1892. There's a couple of them like that I kind of bullied my way through. Or even farther in the game, there's some of them that like I didn't find the information for the code until later in the game, but I actually kind of once again did like the there's one. It's like this jumps a little bit farther ahead, but there's one where the lady's like, I made the lock based off my son. So it's like, how many sons do I have? How many of them have freckles? How many wear glasses? You know, how many yada yada yada. And I'm like, well, by that standard, the numbers are all going to be like 1 to 4 probably. Right. So I literally could kind of guess my way through it and just flip. And it's like, okay, there we go. Made my way through, and it felt like it was like an hour later I found the actual like solution. I'm like, how was it? That was like so many doors later. It's like I did not know how that was supposed to come first, but obviously it does. That area is where it becomes, I feel, kind of Silent Hill-like, because you're in a town and there's just every door is locked and they're all completely different from the next. And it just really reminds me of like starting out in Silent Hill and trying to figure out your like way of the land.
Well, in polar opposite, you know, because like one of my complaints about, well, not even like complaints, but just like comments about Alone in the Dark in last episode was just like, holy shit, you start this game and there's just a million doors. This game has a million doors, but they're telegraphed. Like they're just because of its map alone, it's just like, oh, I've touched that door before because it's blue and it's open and I can go through there, you know, or it's red and I need this key item to open it. Oh, that's in my inventory now. Cool. Let's go do that. You know, like it's night and day difference comparatively to, I mean, and Alone in the Dark's a bad game to compare to this anyways, but, but in terms of the genre and how maps are done, how UI is done and whatnot, this game is very solid. It's very simple, but it's very solid. And I love that it looks like it's hand drawn too. You know, like it's like it's like he's almost like building the map as you're going. You know, like not physically. You know, like not actually doing an animation of drawing this map out, but like as you're progressing through, just it looks like it's a hand drawn map. And then on top of that, you can actually pick up maps in the game. You know, that autofill the areas for you. So if you miss the secret door or you miss the thing or whatever, you know, like once you pick up the map of the area in game, then it shows you all the places you haven't been yet and whatnot, which also gets your curiosity meter going of like, how do I even get there? You know?
Yeah, so. No. I think that the structure of it's so nice, because there's some survival horror games that like at some point you just have to pull the guide out because you're just like, dude, where do I go next? Like, it's like nothing's giving me any clues. And this one does a great job of like, yeah, you can look at the map. You can check to see which ones you've used. You know, you'll try to find some items and so on like that. The notes are pretty darn like,
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think it is pretty well balanced in that. And as we were saying, you start off in the first one, we were at the front and everything like that. And that's actually the only short chapter in the game is that first one. Because then right away it's like, boom, you go into like chapter 2. And this is where you're just you're back behind the front, but now you're just running around the trench areas and so on like that. And you're just kind of getting the lay of the land. That's where we kind of learn that you can put barbed wire up. This is, I think you discovered like the fuel and all that stuff there, that you can burn the bodies. You start seeing some rats, and then you realize you can also blow throw a grenade in a hole and, kill the rats in there. But that part there kind of explains a lot of the stuff that we've been talking about already. You get to chapter 3, and that's where it actually starts to change up quite a bit, because they're like, yo, you got to go down south to like, almost this no man's land area where the artillery's been firing and so on. And this part here is quite long, and it's kind of a cluster. I think it's kind of it's a cool area, cool scenario. I think it's kind of the weakest part of the game because
100%.
It's hard to traverse in this. Like, this is where like the controls are so perfect and smooth when you're in the trenches. It's like that's how the game was designed, everything like that. So now you're in this like artillery blown out area, and there's dead horses, and there's trees blown over and buildings blown out, and there's these pools of water that some of them you can walk through, some of them you can't. So you just never really know. There's some areas too that I noticed that some German soldiers can clearly run through, but I clearly couldn't go back the other way.
Yes.
Because I used to do that sometimes too. You would see some soldiers, I'm like, shoot my rifle off. I'm like, I just want to see which way they go because I'm not too sure where to go myself. Right. And then it'd be like, okay, cool, kill that guy. I'll run that direction. And they're like, I can't seem to squeeze through here. What the hell?
Yep. No, same thing in my opinion too, because like chapter 1, chapter 2 starts off so strong, like so strong that, but by the time you're told like, so basically at the end of chapter 2, there's a very large battle that happens in the front or whatever, and you have this battle, and this is the very first choice that you have in the game. I don't know if you even realized that you had a choice at this point when you ran through the end of chapter 2. Did you even realize you had a choice?
I didn't until you brought it up. I literally did not know that there was these choices to be made. I just went to the front and said, like, I'll do my civic duty of killing as many guys until the time runs out, I guess, or whatever happened. Because I guess I wasn't thinking of it like, once you brought that up, I'm like, oh, it's a time limit is what's going on here. It's not necessarily, I was thinking at first it was just like, I just have to kill 15 guys, come hell or high water, know, because I almost looked at it more like it was a survival round. And I was like, okay, I grab whatever gear you're going to need, get that artillery gun and start clubbing guys. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because basically, like right towards the end of Act 2, your lieutenant's just like, the Germans are coming, like, go back to the front, and you go fight this battle on the front line. But there's an alternate way to go about it that I just randomly stumbled across. So when you go to the front, your lieutenants want you to go up and to the right. That's where the battle exists. I like to explore, so I go to the left just to see if I can grab an extra couple pistol ammo or something, like just whatever, a new bandage or something, So I go to the left, and there's this little section, this little like bunker or whatever, and I walk into this bunker, and there's a box there that I can interact with. I can push it, and I like shove it over. And there's like a hatch on the ground below it, and I'm like, what's that? Another area. Curiosity kicks up. Click on it, and it's just like, do you want to hide? And I'm like, okay. Like, I had no idea what it meant. I was like, hide. Okay. So I click it, and then it like fades to black, and then it goes 30 minutes later, the battle is now over. And then I come out, and there's like this scene of my character like during the battle, like hunched down with his hands over his head, just shaking, just freaked out and hiding, and whatnot. And then you come out 30 minutes later, the battle's over with at this point. There's bodies everywhere. And I'm like, dude, I just waited out that whole battle. Like, I don't have to do it. Like, what? And I'm like feeling like a piece of shit at this point,
because here was I was up here like clubbing these guys to death as a one-man army.
So what's funny is, and I don't know if you can even remember like what your interaction is with the lieutenant after that battle, because when I went to go talk to him, he goes like, hey, I didn't see you out there, but thanks for fighting the good fight and blah, blah, blah. Like we got separated, thinking that I fought, and whatnot. And he's just like, blah, blah, blah. So the whole reason why we have to go south at this point is that the lieutenant has a very special message, that like, oh shit, our troops are dying. We don't have a lot of reserves. We have to go to, I forgot the name of there's
a fort down there.
Whatever the fort is down. But go more or less, he's giving you a note to deliver to go to the sergeant, lieutenant, whoever down there to send more troops, because the front's falling basically. So that's why in the start of Act 3, we go into what Spence was describing as just like this war torn, like no man's landish style place of it's very, I don't know, farmland and whatnot. And like Spence is saying is like, it's the first part of this game to where I was like, I don't really like this. And I think a lot of it boils down to its pixelated graphics, its depth perception of things, the way that it's like visually built in the game, and pathing. None of that feels good in Act 3. I think that the way that you unlock things and do the puzzles within this zone, granted, it's tedious and it takes a lot of time, but slowly unlocking each zone, because this map is very rectangular, and there's like nodes. There's like 3 nodes at the top, 3 nodes in the middle, 3 nodes at the bottom, or whatever. And they're all and what I mean by nodes is like individual screens. So like you go through a door and you're in this new zone, or whatever. You go through another door, you go to this zone. The way that you path through all of that is funky, just because of random obstacles. Like Spence is saying, sometimes you can walk through that puddle, sometimes it looks like a similar puddle's right next to it, but you can't walk through that one. And it's like why, like why? So yeah, this is the first easily is my least favorite part of the game is Act 3, like in its totality, because not really a lot happens here, other than you unlock the transportation truck, which I thought was an interesting mechanic.
Which I didn't realize I could use that transportation truck until I was done with Act 3. I was like,
Really?
Are you kidding me? I've been running up and down this thing the whole time.
Okay, maybe that's why I have a better opinion about it.
Yeah, because I literally ran that whole. I realized that at literally when you were about ready to leave, I talked to that guy. I was like, "Hey, you want to go down to the fort?
Damn.
You want to go down to the fort? Are you kidding me?"
Okay.
You know? So
okay, that makes more
maybe
sense.
maybe that's why, because I literally ran up and down. But I got good at it. Don't get me wrong. I got good at running through those swamp area and all that stuff. And as I said, it looks cool. Visually, it's cool. I like how the game fully changes its environments throughout. Too. Like it's actually quite surprising, because I would have just assumed, you'd be in the trenches the whole time. That's the game, 6 hours and everything. But no. These chapters are long. I mean, each chapter is probably almost like 4 hours long, like each, other than the first one. The first one's the only short one, but all the other ones, it's like, it's like, you're spending 3 to 4 hours, give or take, traversing through this, going through it. And there's cool stuff you find along the way, don't get me wrong. And even in this third chapter, there is a lot of neat, and it's where the game starts to get, I feel, darker and everything like that, and you see the brutality a lot more here. And one thing even I'll say is, whenever you run into soldiers, I think this is kind of an interesting thing about it, is other than like your lieutenant, which you did mention before, like your lieutenant's like, "Hey, I didn't see you out there." For me, he was like, "You did a good old job there, son. Like we got a reward for you when you get back." But is it all the soldiers you talk to? Their names are always just question mark, just to sort of say like nobody knows anybody's names out here anymore. And there's even a memo you find at one point that I think is kind of interesting, where they're like, at first we used to send people out with their friends and their brothers and everything like that, and we realized that was not a good idea. So we started sending them out with randoms every single time too, because we didn't want anybody to have any connection to each other.
Yep. Yeah, and that's this exists throughout the totality of the game, but like the things that I can comment on in this particular act that we're in Act 3 is that because as Spence mentioned, like this is like where the tone really starts to dial up to 11 and whatnot, because like everything is just so drab in this area. It's just everything is wet and broken and muddy and war torn, and there's just mortar craters everywhere. There's dead horses, there's dead bodies, it's just morbid. Like this entire zone, the entirety of the game is morbid, but like this zone, I really appreciated that side of it. And again, just like the notes that you find, I can't hyper specify anything that happens in this particular act, but like you read notes about like the gas, like it killed my friend, his lungs are bubbling and blah blah blah, and like we can't save him. And it's just like just these soldiers' recounts of like things that have happened to him and whatnot, and like and it's usually is set up really in a cool way, because it's usually just a static body like built into the environment that's just like up against a wall, kind of slumped over, or whatever, and you find these notes on these people. You find pictures of their family. You find, like just random stuff like that. I think it really builds to the tone. But there is a fort down here. And eventually, after working your way around this zone a million times over, we deliver this note to the lieutenant down in this fort. And again, like, and I think this is where I'm going to like kind of question like how yours went versus mine, because I think that we already have a divergent path at this point in the game. But when I talk to this guy, he more or less is just like, I understand you guys want more soldiers, but we're kind of fucked too, but I guess, whatever, I'll send people. So that's more or less how mine went. I don't know if that's just how it goes typically, or if there's
I think that was. I don't think that was too much of a difference. I think really it seems like the front and stuff is kind of like, that's like the big turning point, is like, do you fight or do you hide? I think a lot of that's kind of what changes like the trajectory of what endings you kind of get, along with, we haven't really mentioned this, but every single time you beat a chapter, you always have a flashback where you go back to your old house, and it's a buildup of like leading up to like going off to the war. And a lot of times you just kind of run around your house and you just kind of learn little things about the family, mom, dad, and then your brother, Pierre, and so on like that. And a lot of times you kind of do like the same thing over and over, but it adds a little bit of layers each time. Like, because you always for some reason have to go collect this cellar key. It's like, why does the cellar thing keep getting locked? It's been like every other day somebody puts a cellar key in some new area, and then you learn a little bit more. Like, oh, at first we're hanging out here, and we're just maintaining the house and making sure mom's okay, checking on the grave and all that stuff, you know, of like, you know, the relatives. And, you know, well, a couple days later, it's going to be, you're getting closer and closer to having to go off the war, you know, and I think it's kind of in that sort of way that, like, there's like, you know, the old movie and book of it's all quiet on the Western Front, which is from the German perspective, but like, you know, we're like, you know, like I always think of that movie as like the teacher's all like, yeah, you guys should go off, it's gonna be great, you're gonna have a hell of a time, you're gonna make friends and everything like that, like he's selling it like that, and then it's like when they get back to like that, well, where's that motherfucking teacher at, like, sent me off there that God knows where, you know, yeah. So it's like that's like what it sort of starts off at, which granted. They used to think in the late 1800s that war was almost like giant chess games, was kind of like what it turned into. They're like, you know, a couple guys die, but like, you know, it's, you know, everything's kind of civilized and so on like that. And it's like Industrial Revolution comes in, bunch of new weapons, have no idea how they work on people. Let's find out.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Man, there's a lot to consume as you're playing, because like I kind of want to tell it like from, you know, like my personal like perspective and whatnot, because there's just, I know I keep mentioning it over and over, but like this feeling of dread in this game. Every character that you interact with, so there's like two recurrent characters that I'm aware of. There might be more, but the two that I'm aware of is a character named Gaston, and Gaston, I never found him by the end of the game, so I don't really know what happened. That's Smokey. So all this
he always wants a cigarette.
Is a cigarette from you, and then there's the medic, and the medic I have experienced 3 times in the game. Unfortunately, I didn't have what he wanted any of the times that I ran into him. So more or less, like, he's usually, when you come across him, he's usually helping out another soldier that's like on the ground or whatever, and he's like, do you have a bandage you can spare? And at this point in the game, it's like, I do, but no, you know, like I need that, please.
Yeah.
So anyway, so there's like 2 recurrent characters, but just just like the way that, because they're not physically talking in the game, it's all text based and you're reading it and whatnot, but the voices I'm putting in my head are just terrified, you know, like these people are just terrified to be here. And maybe it's like a little bit of leaking out of like what I was feeling as I was playing the game, is that, again, it's not a horror game in the sense of like, oh, the creepy thing that's, you know, scrambling down the hallway, climbing on the ceiling, you know, like it's nothing like that. It's just war, you know, like it's just guttural. It's depressing. It's real, you know, like it just feels so real. And I just very much appreciate like how a solo developer was able to pull this off, you know, by telling all these little micro stories within this game, and then having an overarching plot on top of it, plus the flashback sequences that Spence is talking about in between acts, because you go from this horrific war-torn war, you know, very bloody, very violent, you know, place, to in between acts to this like very serene, you know, like you're on the farm again and you don't have weapons, you have unlimited stamina, you can sprint everywhere you want.
Yeah, that's the best part. You got limited stamina.
Right? You know,
because sometimes that's always the thing. Whenever there's games with stamina, I always get like a mixed feeling about it. I'm like, I don't mind stamina in combat, but for like, can I just have unlimited stamina when I'm running from point A to point B on the map and just dropping stuff off at the chest again?
Yep. Yeah. So, I mean, like, so by this point in the game, it's like, you know, you run down to this fort, you ask this lieutenant, I need backup. Okay, we'll send backup, and then more or less the game sends you right back to the trenches again.
Yeah. Because it kind of what it really reminds me of the structure, especially at this point, is that like it feels a lot like Resident Evil 1, where it's like, okay, you have the mansion, which is chapter 2. And then you go down to like the guest house area, which is chapter 3 in this game. And then you come back to the mansion, and now things are going to get a little bit more intense, but they're areas you've already been at. And that's totally what this kind of does here. So you go back there, you fight another front mission again, you know, back to the front, go up there, battle or hide, I guess, you know, and you go through that. And then I think once you get to this point, there's this really interesting part where, like, I want to say that lieutenant guy's like, he's like, hey, or it might be before this actually, but or maybe it's for chapter 4. I'm kind of running them all together. But there's a part where he goes, "Hey, there's a bunch of guys out there. I want you to go find them and make sure to tell them to come back to the front. If they give you any, lip or anything like that, and they try to run away, kill them. It doesn't matter. You know what I mean? So you get one of those moments." And at first you start running across these guys and like they'll dart out of the room so fast. You're like, who the hell was that? Like I was like, oh, wait a second. Those are the guys I was supposed to get, and you find a couple of them there. And most of the time you talk to them like, no, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. And then he just says, whatever, he disappeared, before you could even say anything. And then there's one dude that like, it gives you an option. It says yes or no, where it says like, hey, go back to the front. And I clicked yes, because I wasn't thinking anything of it. And the dude starts swinging at me. So I'm like, well, here we go. We'll club him over the head, And then I told you, I'm like, if you get to this part, hit no on it. I just want to know what happens. And were you able to hit no?
So no, just forces him to stand idle. He doesn't do anything. He just stays there.
Interesting.
So you virtually have to hit yes. Now, whether or not you have to actually kill him is another question. I ended up killing him, but what I was curious about is like, because this lieutenant and because it's a trigger for the quest to complete, quote unquote, you have to clear out all the bunkhouses. And this is where all these soldiers exist that Spence is talking about. So you in chapter 2, you start to come across those red doors, which I'm just going to explain the mechanic real quick and how cool it was. But like in chapter 2, you're coming across all these red doors of these like bunkhouses, and you're looking at the map and you see that you need a key item, the bunkhouse key or whatever, you don't find that until I think the tail end of chapter 3 or early chapter 4, to be able to go back to this zone, and this is like multiple hours later. This is good, probably 4 or 5-ish hours later, by the time you get this bunkhouse key, you're going back to an original zone that you started off in. It's infested with German soldiers and whatnot, and you're unlocking all these, these doors that were locked to you previously. I think that that's super cool level design and like game design of like, it's Metrovania, at that point,
Mm-hmm. But well, as I said, that's very Resident Evil 1, because that's how Resident Evil 1 is. Because you find all these doors that you never unlock, and then you kind of go there and you come back like, oh, now I have that. I think it's the helmet key or something like that. Now I can finally unlock all these. And of course, even all your safe zones too. Like, so they take over some of those areas. That in chapter 4, there's a part where you run into like, there's that part you start off at the very beginning of the game where it's the mess hall and whatnot like that. And it's like, it's got a box in there. You can go get health from the wall and everything and so like that. And you go in there this time, it's like, no, there's a bunch of Germans. They've occupied this now, Or there's another one this is one of those ones that got me real is the top right. There's a save point on that map. And I went into that save point and there was a big guy right in there in the dark and everything like that. And I was like,
and it's detrimental because in that level, or in that map, for the supply trenches or whatever, it's detrimental losing that one safe zone up in the upper right corner of the map, because by this point, maybe that's something else I should explain real quick. Levels loop around on themselves and are very. It almost reminds me of like the original Dark Souls, and like again, like you can't path through this certain section of the map because you don't have the key to unlock the door, so you can path through it and whatnot, which is getting back to that point we were just talking about. But when you lose this save point, early safe zone in that corner of the map, I think by this point you don't have the shortcut unlocked that loops you back over to the other side of the map. So it takes forever to get to that northeast corner, basically. So what Spence is talking about at this point, so the totality, Spencer, the totality of chapter 4, I was running around with 1 health tick with no meds, could not find meds, couldn't find fabric, couldn't find anything, because the early portion of chapter 4, I had got hit so much that I spent all my money buying out the vendor of all of his meds items, and whatnot. I couldn't find any more. So I'm running around this entire time with 1 health tick, which is basically a one-shot, at all. Act 4, I think, took me probably, like, in real time, probably about 6 hours due to the amount of deaths that I had. But, like, in-game time, probably closer to, like, 3.5, somewhere like that. It's long. And I think that a lot of my experience with being padded was very self-inflicted, because I was playing so cautiously and whatnot, But that losing that save point in particular screwed me so bad, because I was on like an hour and a half run at that point, expecting to be able to save there, going into that room, not being able to save. That big hulking bastard comes out, stun locks me, and kills me right there. And I lost an hour and a half, dog. I was so upset.
Oh man, well yeah, I can understand, because I mean that guy. I don't even know if you can kind of like not get hit by that guy, because I got clubbed right in the head by that dude too. Just like, oh Jesus, I didn't. I mean, I maybe if you knew, but if you don't know, yeah, he's right there.
Yep.
You know, and of course they start darkening up a bunch of the rooms, and I'll have to say this too. We mentioned you get this little torch battery packed light thing that you get, which of course the first. I accidentally left it on too many times that like the battery would always be dead, because like, oh yeah, it was on, you know, and of course I was running around the daytime, and the second that I go inside, that's when I realized it doesn't work anymore. You're like, thank you. So I played a lot of the game where I didn't even use that light again, because I kept accidentally burning out my batteries, just because you can't, when it's daytime, you can't really tell that thing's on. That's kind of annoying. You know, I wish there was a little bit more of a cue for that, but And I didn't start using it again until like chapter 6, it felt like, because then I finally had some batteries again. So I played a lot of that dark stuff where I just like, I just do the thing where I try to get guys to run towards me. And, you know, when it's like, it's dark in here, let's just see if they run towards me.
Right.
Because at least all the enemies always have lights on them too, so you can see them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I used it pretty sparingly throughout the experience. Like, there's a couple sections where, like, I mean, you can get through it without a light, but good luck, you know, like the labyrinth in particular in chapter 6.
Well, the upside is the map is still good. That's the one thing that is, if that map wasn't so good, I would definitely need the light. I would be like, oh man, I'm really screwed here. But the map was so good that a lot of times I would just open the map. Oh, okay. Go up, open the map again. Up, open the map again. Up. Okay, there we go.
Yep. Yeah, no, I very much agree. Flashlight's cool mechanic. I don't think it's particularly necessary. I do kind of wish that my thought about the what am I trying to say? The lighter was an actual thing in the game and whatnot, because they could have played into the flashlight mechanics a whole lot more. They could have had a lot more dark areas in this game where the battery would matter much more than it actually did, at least in my experience, to where you would basically, if they made light like necessary, you know, in a lot more areas than what actually exists in this game. I don't know if it would add or detract from the game at that point, but again, like adding an extra mechanic like for the lighter and whatnot, to where it has a dual purpose to make more sense to be in your inventory, more or less is what I'm getting at. You know, so instead of having just the lighter in your inventory with a fuel container just to burn bodies, like make it multi-use, you know.
Yeah, I think that would be, because as I said, that's probably if there's like any, like, in these complaints, they're all very, I call them minor nitpicks, if anything. It's
none of these are problems.
There's too much items in the game, in a sense. I mean, even there's even other items we never really mentioned these, but you actually get these perk items too. You pick up some of them. You get one of them I got from the medic dude by giving him enough stuff over time, where it actually worked out kind of well, because he gives you a perk item that pretty much makes like almost any bandage like almost fully heal you, which is pretty dope. Yeah. So like you could literally use like the non-disinfectant, whatever, like the first like level 1, and it would pretty much give me like 3/4 health.
That's nuts.
So I think that was also how I saved a lot more on health, because I had that thing and I was like, wow, this is kind of great. Okay. But the downfall is they give you all these kind of cool perk ones, and a lot of them are neat, but it's like, once again, I've not wasted my inventory space for this. Like there's one you get where you can roll a little bit farther, which is kind of good. I tried it out, but once again, I had to throw it back in the box because you know, because sometimes you'd roll, but you just don't roll enough and you get clobbered still. Yeah. The perk almost gives you that little bit of extra distance that you pretty much never get hit, which is kind of neat. Yeah. They give you other ones too, like one that you run faster, which once again, I wish I had that on the whole time, but not worth carrying, you know.
Yeah, so I ran, so that was the primary one that I bought. I didn't buy any of the other ones. I bought the run faster one because, again, like the first, I'd argue chapter 1, 2, and 3, I mostly avoided enemies. So I spent the money early to get that so I could just sprint faster past them and whatnot. And that significantly helped. By the time that we're like where we're at right now, like chapter 4, starting to get into chapter 5-ish, I dropped it out of my inventory pretty quickly just because like at that point, the enemy density is so vast comparatively to the early portion of the game that like you almost need to be in combat, especially because like with the way that the levels loop around on themselves and you're going through the same zones over and over and over and over and over again. It's like, you should probably just kill these guys, like just get them out of the way to make this easier in the future runs, so.
Yeah, because it helps to clear rooms. This is one of those games where I feel like, some games is like, if you're never going to come back to an area, it's totally fine to skip and run past it. But like this one, you go past things so many times, it's just like, might as well clear this bunker out, might as well clear this room and this pathway and so on. And I feel like it would be a little bit different if there wasn't the melee weapons. Because I don't know, did the melee weapons break really fast for you? Because I felt like
I didn't use them much.
Yeah,
like I used the unbreakable knife most of the time. So
because the melee weapons is like, because I saved those repair kits, and then once I kind of got some good weapons later on, then I'd start repairing them. But like the shovels, I'd be like, yeah, it's done, toss it, grab another one, and as long as you're hitting guys from behind the head, like I felt like I could get quite a bit of kills out of it.
Yeah.
You could kill 25 guys with just one shovel almost, it felt like, before you had to repair it or grab another one.
So another item that you can get in the game is that the body armor,
Yeah.
So I picked up the body armor originally. It's in its full, perfect condition and whatnot. Throw it on my body. And then I get hit for the first time, and then it goes down to half, right? And then that's when I started to recognize like the repair box mechanic of like, so you buy a repair box or you find a repair box, and then you can repair, the melee weapon or the body armor or anything that has like a degradation bar. Once I repaired that thing once, it went back to full health. It remained in my inventory slot the entirety of the game, and it never went down again as many times as I got hit and as many times as I got shot. I don't know if it was bugged or if it was, but I never repaired it again, and it remained at full health the entirety of the game, regardless of if I got hit or shot.
And you weren't losing health or anything?
No.
I think that kind of happened to me too, because I remember like we were having a little conversation, and I was like, once I kind of got that body armor, I was like, it almost like I stopped worrying about healing a lot. It was like almost like it took, mine did eventually go down because I still had to always repair it, but it felt like I could take like a couple of hits and be like, whatever, keep running.
So I apologize. I misunderstood what you meant. I would take damage. My health bar would go down when I would get shot or hit or whatever. But the body armor wouldn't do anything. So I couldn't tell if it was still adding the effect, to where it was protecting me more so than a standard hit, or if it was just bugged and just wasn't working at all. And thinking about it now, it's actually a little depressing if it was that way, because I've had it in my inventory the entirety of the game.
I'm going to ask you this really quickly, because I got kind of screwed on a couple items this way. You might have had it in your inventory, but did you have it equipped?
Yes.
Okay, because that was something that I noticed in this game too, is like, you could have it in your inventory, but if you didn't have it equipped, it wasn't working, which I thought that was kind of a little bit silly. I don't know where that was one of those ones where like it was like the flashlight too. So you're sitting there like, do we got the flash? Oh, it's not equipped, Or there's a couple other ones too that like there's just they're very, very light, and it's like this is probably just like if obviously if you had a little bit more play testing, you would kind of notice it, but like. You can't just like sometimes certain items you like the light in the battery. You can't combine the light in the battery. No. You have to hit the insert button. It's like, sure. I've been combining things since 1992. Right. Don't you dare take that away.
And why do you have to have the thing equipped to combine the to insert the battery anyways? It's like if I have the helmet here and I have the battery in my right hand and I just like.
There's some stuff in there where it's just a little bit like that feels like that's kind of like the one person programming design there, like you know what I mean. Probably it's like what do you mean like I know what it's going on, like you programmed it,
Exactly.
But so there's some stuff like that. I feel like that body armor thing, if you did actually legitimately have it equipped, because there was moments where
I toggled it multiple times
where I noticed where like I had an item, it's like well, it's there, it's in there, it's not equipped, so it's not doing it. Because mine would do the thing where it would go down there, and then until it went to 0, then I would start taking damage.
Yeah. No, because once I realized it, because I toggled it equipped on and off multiple times or whatever, I left it on as equipped and then continued on the game and left it equipped the rest of the game, and it never did anything. Yeah. What I was curious about, the reason why I kept it on was that it appeared that I was still reaping the benefits of what the body armor does by giving you reduction in damage, but it wasn't taking damage itself, so I couldn't really tell like the entire time, but I didn't really want to get rid of it in case it was, so
yeah,
so I probably burned an inventory slot for no reason.
Yeah, because well, at first I was thinking like maybe it's a difficulty thing, but I'm like no, because it has that damage bar. That damage bar should go down no matter what. So
right.
Yeah,
I think it was bugged. I think it was bugged, to be honest.
Yeah, that sounds like one of those ones. Well, that's like, I had an issue on my game because I was playing it on the Switch version or whatever. And so every single time I would turn the game off for the night, I'd put my Switch in standby mode while the timer kept running.
Yep.
So when I beat the game, it took me 66 hours.
That is a really weird... I don't know why it would do that. I mean, like... I guess the game's suspended, but
yeah. So I guess it's like the game's still technically, because I think certain games, I guess they're programmed in there where when you put it in like suspend mode, it has like a kind of an auto pause. But I think some games, it's like in a sense, it acted like it was still just running.
Yeah.
So I was just standing there in the save room, because I don't think if I think about it, I don't think I paused the game or anything like that. I think I just left it. It's whatever. Yeah. Nothing's gonna happen. Yeah. And I've only had that error twice in my entire life. I had that same error with the Mass Effect trilogy when it came out with the remastered version.
Yeah.
Because it did that same thing too, where it looked like I played Mass Effect 1 for 135 hours.
Jesus Christ.
Which it kind of bums me out because then it's like, then you can't tell what your real time is.
Right.
Because I literally had to do the thing where I'm like, I have to look at my footage and kind of like add it up and do this. I mean, granted, at the end of the game, it does. Well, no, at the end of the game, it told me it took me 65 hours to beat the game. So,
right. I am really curious about that too, because, and again, I think it's like the curiosity in my mind is the difficulty side of things, because I was on normal and you were on recruit or whatever. Like I'm really curious to see like what the time differences really were, like down to the second, but I think in general, based off your play time and the amount of time that you put in versus me, like I may have like an hour or two past you, but like I really don't think they're much different. I don't think that like it just took me longer to get through the game just because of my schedule, really, and I was doing them in like 30-minute, hour, 2-hour bursts, like where I could, and by the end of this, I mean, like in reality, I mean, what I forgot what mine said, like 15 hours or 12 hours or something like that. It was 12 hours, 16 minutes.
When I saw that, I was like, that seemed kind of low, because for some reason, now granted, I was looking at the time of just the total playthrough, so that you got to add some deaths in there and so on like that.
Right.
But because I would have said like closer to 16 was my kind of guesstimate.
Well, that's what's cool about Steam, is that Steam tracks how long. Granted, it's application open, so like I mean,
the Steam number, I always feel you got to take it with kind of a grain of salt sometimes, because sometimes I feel like I know I did not play the game that long.
Right. So I'd give this a 10% buffer or whatever, so cut 2 hours off this, but basically like my Steam hours right now are 20 hours. So
that's probably about right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because a lot of times I think you always gotta go. Well, if you pause the game for a moment, had dinner, came back, and Steam's still counting those hours.
Oh yeah.
So, but that's why I think when you see some people's hours, they got like 300,000 hours. You're like, well, they must have just paused the game for a while, went to school and came back. Yeah,
Yep.
But yeah, no. So, well, Act 4, you kind of you're back to the trenches and everything like that. And this is the really actually interesting, because at first, like, if you didn't mention actually that there were 6 acts, I would have thought that Act 4 was the end of the game.
Right.
That was what it really felt like it led up to. I'm like, okay, there'll probably be like a final battle, and that's what I was kind of thinking like Act 5 would almost be. But they actually kind of throw you a curveball, and they give you Act 5, which is quite large, and you literally go to a full-on, city in a sense. Yeah, you get the town, which gives, now this is where the Silent Hill elements start to come into play, because not like anything demonic or anything like that, but like literally the fact that like here's this town, every single door is locked, and they're all locked with like a different key, so you're gonna have to go explore around it. And this is actually where I think the rats start to get a little bit more intense.
Yes,
is in this area, because there's a couple places you can throw grenades, but I think there's some areas you can't.
Yeah.
So you can't get rid of any of them, and it's not like I had that many grenades throughout this game anyways. I think I only maybe found 5 of them. And of course I wasted a couple of them. Like I remember there was like, oh, I'm going to get these guys here. And the grenade bounced back. I was like, yeah, now they all know where I'm at. There is one achievement though I did get where you kill I think you kill a couple enemies with grenades, and I think I might have done it by blowing up rats.
Oh really? Hell yeah. Yeah, definitely. I didn't get a ton of achievements in this game. But again, I think a lot of it has to do with like how how much like stealth I really ran, the first portion of it and whatnot. Most of my achievements are just end of acts, and whatnot.
Yeah.
Which surprisingly, and maybe it's more popular as a console game, but on Steam, like really what I was really surprised by was the completion rates. Even like, let's see, chapter 2 has a 30.7% completion rate.
It's
30.
so low.
Like nobody has played this, or people that own it like haven't got the end of chapter 1 is a 38%. Like the end of the game is 17%. Like, so I don't think a ton of people have actually like played and beaten this game, at least on Steam. I'd be curious to know if this is more like what the back end on the developer end looks like. Is this more popular on console than it is on PC?
Yeah. It was weird because I wonder if it's one of these kind of games that a lot of people buy it because the idea sounds really cool. But then I is the game a little too old school for a lot of people, I think they buy it and there's like, it's too old of a game, I guess, in a sense, which is funny because I think that like it's actually one of the most dialed in experiences of a survival horror. Like, it is old and it is top down view and it looks kind of like it's a Super Nintendo game or something like that. But it's one of those ones like, to me, I think it's like it has a lot of the stuff in there that really kind of makes the game run really smooth, like the map, the way that like the items are. Even like we're at the town right now, kind of talking about this. And this part here, other than the fact there's a couple puzzles that I solved before, you generally just kind of run. It's like, not in this area. Then I run back around the map. Boop, 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 boop. Okay, check this area, check this door, and so on. And then you kind of finally figure it out. I think there was another one too, because it's kind of towards the end. You're getting these like placards to put on this church there, and I never found like what the exact thing was. But I'm like, there are 4 placards. I got to line them up here. I think I can kind of guesstimate this, and it probably took me a couple minutes of just like sun, moon, whatever. Like, was it lamb?
Yeah, and like a feather or
whatever. And then I kind of just rotated them around, and then eventually opened. But I never found the like where you were supposed to find the clues or the answer to it.
So in this, this is easily my favorite part of the game, Act 5 in general. To touch on the end of Act 4 real quick, just so the audience knows, there's another battle sequence that happens at the end of Act 4, and you have these choices again of like go to battle or go hide. I hid, Spence went to battle.
I went to battle again, didn't know any better.
Yep. And same thing, because like at this point in the game, me as the player, like I've already made these choices, leading up to this point of that chapter 4 battle where it's just like, fuck it, I'm just going to continue on this path of just hiding because again, I'm limited on resources. I don't have my guns upgraded as well as I would have liked to. I don't have a ton of saves. I don't, like, fuck it, I'm just going to hide and just roll with it, So then we get sent to this town, right? And what Spence is talking about is very much like built into the level itself. So there's manhole covers in all corners of the map. So northeast, northwest, southeast, southwest. On all corners of the map, there's manhole covers that show those symbols and the key items are nearby, so you have to put those manhole covers being in the areas that they are translate to that door. So upper left, upper right, bottom left, bottom right, and it's, that's a whole other piece we forgot to mention. Puzzles are a variable in this game. They change per playthrough.
Yeah, or certain ones do. I think some stay the same and some are randomized, which is kind of cool.
So this is one of those examples where you can look online as much as you want and you can see all the however many combo, potentials there are with 4 quadrants, but it's specific to your playthrough. So even if you look it up, it's like, I mean, like Spence said, like you can bully through it. I mean, you can just keep switching things around until something works for sure. But I love that they baked it into the level itself, where it's like, oh, the lamb's in the upper right corner and the sun's in the bottom left corner. Well, that only, and in my experience, I only found 2 of them, and then translated it to the door and was just like, okay, well, the other 2 have to be either one's on top, one's on bottom, or you switch them and it works, So I halfway bullied the system, to do it. But yeah, the town, it reminds me of like remember the scenes in like Saving Private Ryan like when they're like doing the ambushes when all the German soldiers are rolling into the town and whatnot, and there's like, you know, the that's where the sniper dies, like up in the tower and all that.
And then where Vin Diesel gets shot because trying to grab the kid.
Right, exactly. Exactly. It spawned so many like core memories of that movie, you know, like in that section. And I think, and again, it's just old decrepit buildings that have just been bombshelled to hell, you know, like, again, you know, like the dead bodies like just littering the streets, and you know, and all this stuff is like, so there's a key difference between like you as the player killing a character, killing an NPC in the world and that body slumping over, versus something that's like baked into the level. And there's like visual differences that you can tell, you know, like most of the pixels that are on like the actual NPCs that you kill are like just a slightly like shade or two brighter, you know, and these are the ones that the rats come and feed on and whatnot, versus the ones that are baked into the level like seem to be like a bit darker and whatnot. But again, tone, atmosphere just oozes with it in this whole area. And like I loved the collapsed buildings that like block your path from this alleyway, you know, so like you're looking at like the objective of like where you need to go, you can see it physically like in your view or whatever, but it's just like, how do I get there, you know? And then slowly figuring out that whole zone, that whole map in my head again, with looking at the map and just visually consuming everything as I'm traversing. I got really good at getting through that whole map by the end of it, especially after you unlock all the shortcuts and everything. Like it's beautifully designed. And I think that the developer did a fantastic job, and it's easily my favorite part of the game.
Yeah, no, that part is really cool. There's a lot of stuff going on there. And it's actually, for it being so far into the game, it's amazing how well designed that part is. And there's a lot of neat stuff, because this is where I feel like you start killing some of the German guys and you start finding photographs with them and so on like that, where it's like, oh, here's a picture of their kid, here's a picture of his wife, here's a picture of his brother, here's a picture of his gay lover, like whatever it is, you know. And so that's like, most one's like, I know you're trying to make me feel bad, but this is like survival of the fittest by this point. I do not care who I kill. I am a killing Frenchman. Don't you dare stop me.
100%.
It's gonna be like, it's like a Metal Gear Solid 3, like when you get to like the sorrow, and you know, if you know the very first time you play the game, of course you probably have killed every single thing that's like lives, and you get to that point and you have to walk through it for like 20 minutes. It's supposed to be like that one, like, look at you, don't you feel bad for all this? It's like, no, this is like a trophy room, look at my work. right, exactly.
There's a micro story told in this zone that I adored, and Spence alluded to it earlier. It's the woman that is talking about her sons, and the key code is, you know, how many of them have freckles, how many of them have mustaches, how many of them have, you know, glasses, and the last one's just how many in general do I have, you know. And she tells you about, I don't know if it's her brother or it's some other family member that owns the prosthetic shop in town.
Yeah, because that's where you find the key code eventually.
Right. So the note basically tells you to go find the family member's shop, you know, and you don't know that it's a prosthetic shop at this point. You do enter that shop earlier, but I don't think that like the context really like sets in until you get to this point because of this micro story. So she tells you to go there. Thank you. I appreciate it. She brings me my Red Bull. So she tells you to go to the shop, and you enter the shop with the context of, I'm looking for this very particular thing to figure out about her sons. And when you walk in there, there's just like, you see all these like heads and whatnot, you know, when you walk into that room. And you go and you click on it and you're starting to investigate. And most of these things, like when you go into like this investigation mode where it just like it pulls up like a still image more or less, and you can kind of move your mouse around or you can move your thumbstick around and hover over things. It's how we like unlock doors in some areas and whatnot. But here you're hovering this thing around expecting to interact with something, but it's literally just a still image. It took me a minute to figure out like, oh, these are the boys. These are, you know, like the four heads in front of me, and really what it was is I noticed that one had freckles, you know, and I was like, and then that memory triggered of like, oh yeah, that's what the woman's talking about. What really tripped me out though is that there's like 6 heads up above the 4 main ones at the bottom. So like, I was like, are all these her sons? Like, wait, the code lock only goes, there's only 4, like what the fuck? Like this doesn't make any sense. Took me a minute to figure all that out. Anyway, so you figure out, that passcode and whatnot. You go and unlock the thing, and then you get the next item to progress on. But in that office, there's a note from that brother or the prosthetics doctor or whatever, basically, and it's a pretty lengthy note too. It's like 15 pages or something like that. And it basically just like goes on to like, it's his recounts of like the Germans coming into the town, taking over. It's him just dealing with the numerous amounts of bodies that are coming in that are just disfigured and are missing arms and legs and things like that. And you just like watch, you're reading his accounts over the course of time in journal entries of like, he's just going crazier and crazier and crazier to the point where he's just like, I have to leave. Like, I can't do this anymore, and whatnot. And again, tone, atmosphere, utter dread feeling, and just gut punch feeling. Like when I finished that note, I was just like, oh my God, like again, like this dude is just driven to madness because of the amount of bodies that are showing up to his shop so he can fit legs and fit, like arms and heads and blah, blah, like all these things. Like it's just nuts, dude. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, that guy, just his business amount of like how many people need it, because that's the thing they do is they just end up like literally chopping people's legs off and chopping their arms off, making sure they don't get any like scurvy or anything like that, or gangrene and all that stuff, all the diseases that we're going through. Yep. There's even a part you see, like I think it's at one of the battles where like there's like an artillery shell that's like blowing a dude's legs off and he's like crawling. And I tried to like club the guy. I'm like, I need to put this guy out of his misery. And it wouldn't let me do it. But he eventually dies, actually. I went over and grabbed an item and came back. You know, so you see some guys take some brutal damage and whatnot there. I mean, it even like, okay, so you have the prosthetic shop thing. About like 3 screens over to the left, there's a German like bunker area that you kind of go, or not bunker, but like a camp and everything like that. And behind the camp, they literally have this ginormous pile of bodies just like lined up like almost like just a landfill, and it has a note in there that says like, we had coffins, we ran out of coffins, we're just piling the bodies now. And so you just see this huge section of all like the soldiers and whatnot just there. I'm assuming it's probably more German bodies than it is like French, because it's kind of in their area, but it just goes to show all their soldiers and so on like that just there. And you run through that area, a handful of times that you just know it by like, yep, here's the bodies again. Like, don't mind me.
Yep. And you see this too. So like you see French soldiers, you see German soldiers, and like every once in a while you'll enter. You just reminded me because of that tent. You walk into that tent and like there's a German soldier in there, but he's just like grabbing at his head and he's just like shaking violently and whatnot. He has no idea that you're even there, paying attention to you, whatever. You can walk up to him, you can do whatever you want, but he just like will not recognize that you're there because he's having this like crazy PTSD panic attack, and whatnot. Really, every time I ran across that, whether it be French or German, I just killed the guy just out of mercy kill, like. And I don't think it really matters. Like, I mean, you might get an item off of them, but again, I was so engrossed into that world at this point that it's just like, oh God, like I can't leave him like that. Like, just
this guy's freaking out.
just kill him real quick, But again, like just the way that they portray that there really was like no winners at all in any of this conflict. Like everybody suffered, and it's not even like really just good guy, bad guy. Like even as gamey as this can be, like it's really not good guy, bad guy. It's just like it's survive. It's just survive, And I think that, in those soldiers that actually did this thing in real life, like that had to have been their mentality the entire time, was just survive. Like I just need to survive. And all the horrors that come alongside that, it's just brutal. This whole region is just brutal.
Well, and especially for the French and German, because I feel like there's a lot bigger difference between this part of World War I compared to because the Americans show up at the very end and it's kind of like gung ho guys, let's go in, let's show them how it's done, and it's like it's so late in the game that like they just come in there and just kind of wreak havoc because they're so fresh, and same the British too, like they're involved of course and they do a lot, but they still are a hop, skip, and a jump away from this area. They're not stuck in these trenches. They're not getting their fields blown out, and so on like that. Because that's really the core part of the war is really Germany and France, and it's one of those weird ones where it's like it is kind of hard to say like there's not really good guy, bad guy. I mean, it depends on what side you are, but at the end of the day, it's like it's it's not like it's not like as cut and dry as how World War II feels, where
Yeah.
it's like there's a definitive bad guy, there's a definitive good guy in this thing, and so on like that. Where, you know, in World War II, it's just like, no, here's a war that was supposed to be, in a sense, a giant chess game like it always was. Well, always was in the last 100 years.
Right.
But no, we have added so much new tech here that nobody really knows how it's going to work, how it's going to, you know, affect things, and so on. I mean, you know, you experience a lot of this in the game. I mean, you even get the gas mask and everything like that, so you can explore some of those rooms.
Yep.
And there's I can't remember, is it in either chapter 4 or 5? You know, you get clobbered by a guy, which this happens every once in a while. You'll run to a room and it'll cut to like a cutscene, and we never mentioned this before, but the cutscenes actually are. I love the graphics of them because they remind me of Sega CD / like Panasonic 3DO games.
Yes.
Like that's 100% like when I see them, that's the kind of game I think of. I really think of like 1993, like instantaneously when I see like the look and feel of it. And even those scenes you're talking about too, where they have like the sort of the mouse clicking kind of stuff. That gives me a lot of those like old school like almost it's like pre-rendered like kind of adventure games.
Yeah, point and click adventure. Yeah, 100%. Mm-hmm.
So, but as I was saying, is like, yeah, you that mask breaks on you at one point, you know, and then it's actually a good moment before you actually get a filter to replace it. And I kind of learned, don't try to run one of those gas rooms and try to make it out. You won't make it.
Yep, exactly.
You know, it's like it gives you kind of like a warning, like, okay, something's happening. You know, though, you know, actually, I want to say one thing. Speaking of the gas. You know what used to throw me off for the longest time in this game is when you step in a mud pile, the screen around you gets this kind of like muddy design. And at first I was like, oh shit, that means the water's probably poisonous or something like that. And I thought I was going to like get a disease or something from it because you get diseases if you get bit by the rats enough times.
Right.
So I thought the mud was actually going to do the same thing to me too, but I never got anything from that. So I think it was just mud. It just it would always scare me when I stepped in it, like I was stepping into something poisonous or radioactive.
Right. Yep. Well, and that's actually one comment that we forgot to mention too about when we were talking about rats an hour ago or so. Rats have a chance to poison you, and I assumed that poison was going to be like tick damage type poison, you know, where we would have to like apply an antidote or, you know, like whatever, you know, like use some kind of item to fix. Really all this does is that it just reduces your max health by like, I don't know, 30%, 40% or something like that, you know? And really like, and I'm trying to remember, I guess I did heal it every time. I don't know if you can just let it heal itself. I don't know if that's like on a timer or something like that, where it just like naturally goes away or whatever, but, I'd have to test that.
I had it sitting there for a while because I just was like, oh, I guess that's all it does. Whatever. I like, not that big of a deal. I'll just keep going on for a while. And I don't remember it ever healing itself. It's eventually you just get a bottle of alcohol or whatever and pour it on there. Because once again, you have like 3 different ways you can like cure. Like that's the other thing. Sometimes there's like too many items for certain stuff. It's like, you know, like just even health wise, there's like 6 or 7 different items for healing. Like almost like, why is there? It's like Dino Crisis 2. You probably could just sum this up with like 1, maybe 2, like small and large. You know?
Yeah, exactly.
But you got like whatever. You get cloth. You get bandages. You get disinfectant bandages. You get first aid kits. You get alcohol. You get this the morphine or whatever. Like
Well, and those were cool too. So I didn't get upgraded health and stamina, I think, until chapter 4. When because it's morphine. So morphine basically gives you a permanent like health buff, you know, where you just have more health in general. And then what's the other one? Is it just like stimulant? Yeah, basically it's just like methamphetamine basically is what you take, and that increases your stamina and whatnot too. So. Yeah, just and I do believe that the vendor does sell those things, maybe only once, but I do believe he does sell them because I bought the health one from him.
Yeah, I think he does. I didn't notice that till I think it was the medic guy gave me my first stimulant and morphine or whatever, and then I was like, oh, that's what that does. I was like, and then I went and literally bought the stimulant because I would have bypassed it because at first I thought it was like I saw it there. I was like, raises your stamina. I'm like, cool, whatever. It probably does it for like, you know, a minute and then it goes away. Not worth it. That was what I thought the whole time. Like, I don't need that. And I thought the same thing with the morphine. I thought it was like one of those ones like, it raises your health for a moment and then it goes back. And then once I realized it was permanent, it was like, oh, I got to get that.
Right.
You know. And then like throughout the game too, of course, you collect gems and jewels and stuff, kind of all a Resident Evil 4 style that you can sell back to the dude. And you collect coins and so on like that. For some reason, you get a badge from that one guy that French guy that you had to fight to the death. You know, he drops a badge, and then I feel like that seems like such an asshole thing. Like, I killed this guy, I take his badge, and then I go sell it for my own personal game.
Yep. Yeah, that was another one too. That so because you are picking up like gems and like just random things like coins and stuff, like I didn't quite understand like what to really do with them other than sell them. So I held on to a lot of them for a long time, expecting like the crown in Resident Evil 4 where you like slot all the things into the other thing to get more money and what like I was expecting a lot more things like that. Which there is one I did notice.
I found two.
You found two? Okay. So I found the necklace that you're supposed to slot the onyx thing into, but unfortunately I had already sold the onyx thing at that point. So I found the necklace part of it. And unless you can slot any gem in there, I don't know. I didn't test it.
I think you can actually slot any gem that happens to be a diamond shape.
Oh, okay. So it was based off shape.
Because I almost want to say I didn't slot the onyx in there because you find the onyx in another one, and like I held on to those for a long time because I didn't know what the heck they went to, because they felt like they were almost like key items, and then I found the necklace, and then there was a ring that you could put something in, but I could never find what you could put inside the ring.
Okay, I missed the ring then. And that's kind of talking about like useful items and whatnot too. Some pieces that we did skip over. I think in like Act 2, I think you get like a trench tool to be able to like bust down certain doors and whatnot. Boarded up doors. You can get.
And then for some reason, there's another one like at the very end of the game where it's like, well, this one, the trench tool won't work, but you need to get the wrench.
Right. Get the wrench to unlock the metal braced doors. It's like, why?
You get like the fire extinguisher to put out this giant fire you're going to put out with this little tiny fire extinguisher.
Yep.
But yeah, there's a lot of those kind of cool key items and so on like that. Just they make it kind of interesting more than just a standard key.
Right.
You get something a little bit else extra.
Yep. And again, like you see the barricaded door in Act 2, and you don't touch it again until Act 4 or Act 5 or whatever. Like so deeper on later on in the game and whatnot. So again, like I think that the strategy level of it with the limited inventory really worked for me very well. Throughout the entirety of this experience, I thought it was really good. So, but yeah, so after we like get through the town, more or less we're just told that like we have a beat on our brother again. We think that he's in Fort Vaux, and we're gonna go after Fort Vaux, and or I don't even know how to pronounce it. It's VAUX. But yeah. So then we go towards pretty much like kind of the final-ish stretches of the game here, and this is just like dark castle basically. It's like
proto Wolfenstein 3D in a sense.
Yep.
Dude, I kid you not, dude. I got so turned around trying to figure out how to get in that castle, because you get the key or whatever the heck it is. I'm like, cool, I finally got that. I know right where that is. And I walk up to the front door, and I'm like, the key, it says Fort Vaux. And I ran back, forth. And then I realized, like, you can literally just walk to the left and go the other door.
Yep.
Why? Yes. Thank you. Good thing no German saw me do that. I mean, I probably literally like lost like 25 minutes at least trying to figure that out. And then I did not. And I was like, and then you go back around and you just unlock that front door. It's like, what the?
Yeah.
That was one of those ones like that was just somebody trying to dick with you. That's all I could do to you.
Yep.
Yeah,
and Vaux, I don't think it's bad at all. Like in general, I don't think any of this game is bad at all.
No.
Like Act 3 is like the worst of it all, but we're talking like
a point down.
Yeah, it's like if the game's 100, like that particular section's like a 90.
Yeah. And it's only because it's really if you could traverse that area really easily, I don't think it would bother me as much. I think that was just the kind of it's the traversing part. You know, it looks cool. I like the change of environment and everything like that, but it's just like, getting stuck
it's on random. Yeah. Getting stuck.
You just feel like you're always like, stuck on a tree, stuck on a puddle, stuck on a horse, stuck on this, stuck on a building. Like, okay, I can't go through there. Yeah. It's more of that kind of nuisance.
Yeah. Yeah, but Vo feels like a very appropriate like final piece of this game because it's like we've gone from the trenches to like down to the farmland. We acquired the troops, we brought them back to the front line to help fight with the battle and whatnot. Now we're down in the town, and like we figure out like and again like this whole time like our whole objective is to find our brother. We're trying to find Pierre. And at the end of Act 5, it's like we're finally starting to catch up with Pierre, and we need to go to Vaux. We understand he's in Vaux. We need to go there. This very decrepit castle, very, I don't know, just like dungeony is what it felt like. It's like, I don't know. I don't know how to compare it to really anything else. It's very much concrete. Everything's hard surfaces and tight corners and tiny little corridors and very dark, very, very dark, and filled with gas, dude. This area is just filled with gas in so many areas, which again, like really feeds into its puzzle elements. I really liked the discovery of the spark plug into the generator room to be able to turn on fans for certain sections of the level. So where you can go and it basically like clears out all the gas of these areas and whatever, because as Spence mentioned, at this point in the game, our gas mask is busted. We don't have a filter anymore. So hitting these generators and like pushing all the gas out of one area, clearing that entire zone, picking up all the key items. And you really don't know at the start of this whether you should choose the left generator or the right generator and what the right path should be. Fortunately, majority of what you do in these gas zones seemingly are optional. Like there's key items that you need to progress, but like there's a lot of like optional stuff in this area too, which is this is where I really started to stack up like my ammo counts, my gunpowders, my ointments, and not ointments, but chemical fluids and like all that type of stuff. This is where I really started to like get into the groove of the combat and just like being really proficient in the game. I didn't die much in Act 6.
Well, this is the part too where you have to start kind of fighting your way through, or I feel like it'd be way tough to try to sneak around a lot of these areas. Because there's a lot of enemies and there's a lot of big guys in here. I mean, then you have to fight the flamethrower guys too.
Yes.
That they initially appear in Act 3, I believe, and those guys are kind of they're fine if you can get them from a distance, but if you get caught on fire,
So I didn't. So they were. They act the same way that that you do, in the sense like when they're ready to fire, they have to stand still and they ready up and they start to charge the thing up and whatnot, and the flames just come out pretty fucking slow. By the time all that happens, I can be a screen or two over. They never felt like a massive threat unless there was another enemy alongside them.
I think that's more it. When there's somebody else in your way and something like that, that's when they're kind of a problem. They do take they take a lot of bullets too, of course, but
so I never killed one. I've seen in footage after the fact, doing some research after my first playthrough on how they die, and the animation is really fucking cool. I like it. When you like shoot them and then like something off their back is just like spraying at like a 45-degree angle, just gas, and just like a flame is like out one side, and then you keep shooting them, and then another one, and then another one, and then it's like 10 of them all at once, and then they explode. Like so cool, dude, so cool.
I was surprised. I think in Act 3, there's one that was in a trench that I felt like, I guess you could hide in the little like hidey holes and go around him that way.
Yeah.
But
and that's what I did for that one.
I guess that makes sense there, because other than that though, it's like I felt like that guy was like really right there and just standing. Yeah. I think I just ran face to face. I was like, oh hey.
yeah, because that was was it Act 3? Maybe no. I think it was
maybe it's Act 4. I could be making that up.
I might even be Act 5, because it's the you have to fire the artillery shell to unlock the cemetery.
Yeah, it's the last artillery shell. So okay, I guess it is there.
Yeah. But regardless, so like again, like in the slow leak too of enemy design in this game, like again, you start off with trench, raiders more or less to start, and then then you get your first riflemen, and then you get your riflemen with the bayonet, and then you
those
get
guys, the bayonet guys.
They are brutal.
I think that's the most brutal enemy in the game, because if you get hit by that bayonet, jeez, does that do a lot of damage? It's like literally, 2-hit kill if you're at full health. What I mean? Like
right. And then you get like the because I think they show up in It might be Act 5 too, or maybe Act 4. But the sword dudes, like you just like randomly come across these dudes that just have swords out of nowhere, and you're just like, what the fuck? Like, yeah, it's like what?
Those guys, funny enough, I felt like we're not nearly as big of after like the guys with the bayonets were the ones a real problem. The guys with the swords, I always felt like they looked like there were way more threats than they really were. But I felt like I just like, yep, no worries, boom.
Yeah. No, they hit hard. That's their thing, maybe it's like slicing damage. I don't know how deep the actual mechanics are on the back end of this game or whatever, but like they hit hard. Like every hit would take away like over half my health, you know.
Oh yeah, I could probably see that for sure.
So
well, by this point, like what I do is I generally would carry the shotgun with like I would just save it for like whenever there was a big guy or something like that. Then I pull it because they don't give you a whole lot of shotgun ammo, so you got to be kind of sparing with that thing. But that was pretty much good for taking. You just almost get a point blank shot, and you could almost take out just about anybody in one, maybe two hits.
Yeah,
you know, and then I would just use. I can't remember if I was because you also get the machine gun by this point too, and they start giving you a crap ton of ammo of that towards the end. So I was like, I guess I should use this. That's how I kind of felt.
Yeah. So
and the machine gun's actually not that bad because a lot of times machine guns in games are kind of like, and there goes all your ammo. Well, that was sort of worth it, sort of not. Right. It's actually pretty good in this game.
Yeah. It was the primary gun I ran through in Act 5. That, well, even into Act 6 for that matter. I just ran out of ammo by the time I was like midway through Act 6, so that's why I had to revert back to my rifle. And unfortunately, at this point, I had upgraded so many different types of weapons minimally that I just didn't have any resources to like full upgrade one good gun, you know?
Yeah.
Which also probably played into my my hiding, you know, like during those major battles and whatnot. And we'll get to it at the end of this chapter, but roughly the same thing, you know. But yeah, so I really enjoyed the mechanics of the spark plug versus the generators and like unlocking things based off section, you know, by clearing out zones of gas. I think that the way that they did the basically like the German key, the lion head key, the three pigeon keys that you need, the prong keys, you know, to unlock the pigeon room and whatnot, which also that's interesting because there's three prong keys that you need to open this door in Act 6. I'm so curious if you can miss the prong key in Act 5. I assume you can, because I didn't realize that this is an optional thing that you can do that we were talking about pre-episode here. But basically, like you get these three keys to unlock this door, and it's a pigeon room, and you have to find a cage for the pigeon. You can put the pigeon in the cage, and then you use it in the final battle that I never did. So we'll get to that soon too. But anyways, unlocking pathing level design in this zone is S tier. It's very, very well done. I've really enjoyed, especially the verticality of it, because you have levels, you know, of like one level up, one level below, and then your standard level and whatnot, and just all the pathing that happens in between that. There was multiple times in this zone where I would unlock a new door, walk through it, and be in an old zone and go, oh, I know where I'm at. So cool. Yeah, no, this part was pretty darn dialed in. There's a couple times I kind of got a little bit kind of stuck having to run back, forth until I go, okay, now I remember where I need to go. But yeah, no, it's kind of an interesting area, and yeah, you do get kind of a lot of keys. And one thing that threw me off though is because you mentioned that the ventilation of changing the spark plugs and everything like that. The one room that used to throw me off because I kept going back forth. I'm like, dude, are you kidding me? Like, is that very first gas room there? I'm like, that's on the first floor. Right. Why is it not like? And then you realize like, oh no, this one for some reason doesn't work with that thing. You need the gas mask again when you get the filter, which you literally get like at the very end, right? You know, right. But that threw me off for a while because I kept going back forth. Like it's got. If it's not this way, it's gotta be this way. And then you're like, why is it not working? You know, but yeah, you go through all kinds of cool areas, this dungeony kind of zone. Then there's like some key lockers that you find. These ones are all randomly generated. One's just like you get it from like a dude's. You have to find a code from a guy down at the bottom somewhere. I can't remember exactly where it is at now, but it unlocks a cavalry sword. Which that thing, once I had that, I was like, oh, this is like the you know the melee weapon of all melee weapons. Right. You know, you get that. And then I can't remember what the heck was in one of the other ones. And then there was the one code that I could not even bully my way through. And that's the one that your brother, and this is kind of a messed up scene, but it's like the fact that like, if you do not find this right code in the flashback scene before Act 6,
your brother once again hides some more stuff in his journal. I got the first code. You're like, cool. I took a picture of it and everything like that. I got it there. And then he talks about another one. And for some reason, I just kind of thought, I'm like, okay, I'll run across this other one, you know. And I didn't realize it was actually still in that dream sequence there. So you had to go out and get it. And it's all symbols. And, you know, it seems like it's like one of those ones where it's kind of a complex, you know, not as easy. You wouldn't notice it right off the bat unless you were looking for it, you know. So that was the only thing I couldn't get to kind of like, I guess, try to get as most complete ending as I possibly could.
Which Spence warned me about, and I still fucked it up because I couldn't. I couldn't do it either. So I'm actually really curious what item that holds, and if it has.
I bet you $100 it's that stupid watch he kept bitching about the whole time. It's like, because there's early on, it's like, you know, if I take that watch with me, that's Dad's old watch. That's going to protect me because it's a physical item and stuff like that. And Dad put a lot of money into that watch. In fact, you know, we didn't get 3 Christmases because of this watch. It's like he brought that watch up a lot.
Right. Oh, yeah.
You know, so I'm pretty sure that's what it was, because even when you find your brother towards the end, the first thing he mentions, it's not like, hey, how you doing? It's like, hey, did you get the watch?
Yeah.
No, I didn't get the watch. I killed 328 Germans to get to you. Like, of course I didn't get the watch because you made this stupid passcode with a bunch of symbols and something like that. Can't you just buy a normal lock like a regular person? Put like a, you know, like an 1800s date on it?
Yep. 100%.
And I sat there. I tried to bully my way through it. I probably spent like 5 minutes trying to figure that clock out.
Really? Yeah.
I was like, man, I just want to find. And of course, it's like you can't look it up or anything like that, which I do kind of give the developer credit for that, because it's like, you know, that'd just be too easy to look it up. But yeah, I couldn't bully my way through that one.
Well, and that's I'm going to revert back just a hair. So post Act 5, and then this is like the final flashback sequence of André, you know, like being at the farm. Like your recruiter is coming to pick your ass up that day, you know, like, and that's like the tone of this area. This is where I found, so you run out to the lake area, you go see your grandfather's grave and your father, or like, you know, whoever the family members are, graves are and whatnot. And then you're running back, and I'm on my way back to the house. And the way to end these sequences typically is to go to your bed and you go rest for the day. And then, you know, the sequence ends and then you go back to the typical game. You're back in the trenches again, right? So here it's like I'm running back from the gravesite back to the farmhouse, and I just happened to see it, dude. I just saw the glint, you know, as I was passing by. It's in just a random bush as you're traversing this path. And I was like, whoa, what is that? You know, and I go pick it up. Well, it's that stupid cellar key that Spence has been talking about this whole time, like how the cellar keeps locking itself over and over again. So I pick that up, and then you go down into the cellar. And there's also a movable object in there. There's like a bookshelf that you can shove over, and there's like a hidden room back there that you go into. And this is like this is Pierre's like hidden room, you know, like his secret area or whatever. And I do believe that this is where you get that information that you're talking about. I just didn't see it, or like, because you kept mentioning symbols, and I'm like reading the notes. Yeah,
because I found the note there. I read that because I literally even did the thing, because I went back to my footage that I recorded of it, and I was like, I'm gonna find it. Yeah, it's probably in there. And it's like, I think it's actually in a different location in that area.
Is it? Okay.
I don't think it's down there. I could be wrong, but I obviously did not see it, because I was kind of hoping it was gonna be something that I wasn't paying any attention to. Like maybe the symbols were written on the bottom of the page, and you're like, whatever.
Yeah. But I thought it was an interesting discovery just because of what Pierre's talking about, you know, like in his journal entry, because these are like the journal entries of the days leading up to being shipped off to war. And again, just tone, atmosphere, heartbreaking, gut wrenching, you know, like just reading this kid's notes and whatnot, you know, and then you run away from there. You hop on the train, hop on the truck yourself, and then you take off to war. Anyways, okay. So if that was the case, the only reason why I wanted to mention that is that I thought that that's where you pick up that information from your brother to get the potential watch, you know, like you were talking about.
I think I could be wrong. It could be in that same room, maybe just something else you have to interact with, but I almost think it's somewhere else. But yeah, of course, Pierre makes like the most silliest code that he invests all his money into, you know. So nobody can unlock it. So that was the only thing I couldn't get. But I got the pigeon and everything like that. So at least I felt like I got something.
Yep.
And Yeah, so once you kind of go through the fort and everything like that, you literally go to like the Netherrealm Hell Zone as you descend deep into the end of the game and whatnot like that. It just literally becomes like full on like molten like lava
Yep.
down below, you know, just
Yep.
like it looks like Terminator 2, like when you're like killing the T-1000.
100%.
And you work your way through this, and then you come back out to hey, there's much more French guys out here and everything like that. And it's like one more round of the front again, you know.
Yep.
You're supposed to go out there, and it's like this is it, boys. This is gonna turn the tide of the war, you know. And you kind of have your last kind of hoorah, and it's that one where it's like, hey, load up on everything you got. First, you actually do a battle like in that kind of furnace-y area, which
Yep.
is I guess so. Since you said you didn't kill the flamethrower guys, you didn't have to kill them in that furnace-y area. Interesting.
Yep. No.
Did you just run past that whole thing? Because I literally fought all those guys there, and I was like, I didn't realize you could run straight through there.
No, so at this point, in this may be a complete difference in our stories. So by this point, after you unlock that final door and you're working your way through like the Hellscape dungeon area and whatnot, right before you run back into your guys again, did you find Pierre right there?
Yeah, because he's laying down there, and he
Okay.
like I think there's like a dialogue like, "Don't worry, bro, I'll be back," you know, in
Yeah.
a sense.
So you're in this like tunnel at this point. There's a handful of just like French soldiers that are on the ground and whatnot. And the telltale sign that the imagery of Pierre, the totality of this game, is his red scarf. Like it's just the one thing that just sticks out on this guy, you know, nonstop is this red scarf. And so
And
you know
got
you
a
see
blue scarf, so it
Right.
kind of. So you got the Sonic and Knuckles thing going on here.
right exactly. So you see like, you know, French soldier, and then as you're working your way north on this tunnel, then all of a sudden, bam, you see the red scarf, and it's like, sick, finally I found him, you know. And I'm expecting like a big exposition dump or something at this point. All that really happens is Andre walks up to him and he's like, wow, he looks like he's hurt, you know. And like you're, you know, like this battle's about to happen, you need to defend the fort, you know. So yeah, Andre basically tells Pierre like, I will be back for you, I've made it this far, I will be back for you, like, you know, I need to go defend the fort. So then you go into the next section and you can either defend or do what I did and hide again. So this is where, so between these three choices, Act 2, Act 4, now Act 6, I think that there's some other variables within the game that I haven't quite keyed into on like what they are or how they work yet, because there supposedly is 8 endings to this game with the secret 9th ending, and 8 meaning that there's 4 endings with an A and B, and then there's like a 5th option or whatever. What I did at this point is that because I had hid already for the first 2 battles in Act 2, Act 4, I just said, fuck it, I'm going to do it again here. So there's a way to do it, and you find the door and you hide, and 30 minutes goes by, and then the battle ends. So when I leave out of this area, I just go back to where Pierre is, right? And he's still on the ground, he's still alive, he's still there. But as I walk through that door and I get close to him, bam, a mortar shell hits. The cave collapses in front of me. So I'm standing there, you know, he's on the ground still, and I'm like, oh shit. And I try to interact with him, and really all it does is it pulls up that 2D still image of like the point and click adventure, you know, type thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, you know, all Andre says is just like, wow, he looks like he's in a lot of pain. And it's like, so I try to give him an alcohol bottle, I try to give him a bandage, I try to give him, and nothing's working, you know. And I'm like, what the fuck? So I like leave him and I'm heading south at this point through that same tunnel and whatnot. And as I'm like heading south, I notice the glint, you know, there's an item in there or whatever, and I'm heading towards it. And then boom, another mortar shell hits. Well, now the door on the south end it blew up and it's blocked and I can't leave. I'm stuck in here now. The item, bro, is a fucking rusted pistol with 1 bullet.
One bull.
And I'm stuck in the tunnel with my brother at this point. I go back to him and I interact with him again. The contextual screen pops up and I'm like, do I just give him the pistol? Like, what the fuck? So I click, you know, pistol, give to Pierre. Yes. Bro, it doesn't even hesitate. The gun goes off and he dies. Bam. It's like, I was expecting to give it to him. We were going to have a conversation. Talk, you know, stuff. No, dog. I fucking
reminisce about that farm. He's going to bring up that stupid watch again.
So I murder my brother, and then the game, like, there's nothing else to do. I can't get out either side. My brother's dead on the ground in front of me. The game is slowly starting to fade in, like darkness is starting to creep in. And then the next thing, like, it finally fades to black and whatnot, and then it kind of reopens back up. And Andre's just sitting there on the corner with a fucking picture of his mother in one hand, a lighter in the other hand, just violently shaking as everything is turning into darkness around him. And then presumably you just die and it goes to credits. And like, that was my ending.
That was your, oh my God, I'll say this, that's actually radically different than my ending.
Yeah.
I got two endings, and I'll kind of explain to you like why I got two of them.
Yeah.
Okay, so interesting there. So you found Pierre. You said you never found Smokey though again, right? The guy who always asks for cigarettes. Well, what Smokey gives you though is he gives you a souped up pistol that, of course, it feels like it's way late in the game, but
yeah.
I didn't even get to use it till I tried a new game plus. That's like how late it was in the game, because I was like, okay. So here's what happened. I got the pigeon thing, all this kind of stuff. I load it up. I get my gear. I go up there. I battle the little furnace one. I kill those guys in there. And then I go to the front, and I literally go out there, and I fight the good fight and so on like that. And guys keep coming. I mean, it comes for a while. It's a long battle. Like, you just keep hearing the whistle going. Another guy comes by. And after a while, I just got kind of pointed like, stand with the cavalry sword. Whistle goes. Guy comes. Bam. Okay, next one. Yeah, like, it was almost like kind of like, it's not as extreme of battle as you would think, but I guess with that sword in my hand, there's a flamethrower guy that comes at some point, a couple big guys, pull out the shotgun, boom, 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 take those guys down, and so on like that. And then I go back to Pierre or whatnot, or I go back and the lieutenant's like, you did a good job, son. This is going to make a difference, for the, the war effort, you know what I mean? And I go back and I find Pierre. First thing I think about is like, damn it, I had that pigeon the whole time and I forgot to release it. So I try to release the pigeon. It's like, you can't release this indoors. Right. And I'm like, well, whatever. Okay, we're going without the pigeon. So then I pick up Pierre or whatnot, and he goes like, "Hey, dude, how you doing?" Like, oh, the watch. Did you get the watch? Yeah. No, I didn't get the watch. He brings that watch up one more time. Yeah. So whatever. And then I like, my scene is he's carrying Pierre. So I'm walking out. The mortar shell does hit behind you, so it blows that thing up. But like, the down path's still fine. So I walk down. You pass by other French soldiers and so on like that, and you keep going for like a good while. You're like really walking him out, and so on like that so far. And then you finally get to the medic tent, and there's the medic dude there and everything like that and whatnot, and you set Pierre down on the stretcher and everything like that, and the medic guy goes over to him and goes, he didn't make it, I mean, that's how it kind of goes there. Like, so you carry it, be like, yeah, I know I didn't make it because I didn't get the stupid watch out of that stupid walker. So it does that, and then when I learned that, like, this is the only part that's kind of different, because there's a part 2 to my ending, but I'll go back I restarted it so I could see what the pigeon thing was. So when you release the pigeon and you release it right there at the Battle of the Front, it sends a bunch of other dudes to come by and help you out, which they mostly just end up dying, let's be honest. It still became a one-man army after a while, but it did make it a little bit easier. And then the scenes had a lot more guys in it, because when I was walking, actually, I want to say this, when I was carrying Pierre in the first ending, there was no other soldiers. It was just me. So it was like just you and your brother, walking back. When I had the pigeon release, there was a bunch of other soldiers standing there. So like, it was almost like you actually had victory and everything that. Yeah. So the pigeon, that's the only thing the pigeon really does. It doesn't do a radical difference.
Okay. It just brings more soldiers. That's cool.
So, okay, now here's part 2 to my ending. And I think I want to say it was identically the same between the pigeon and no pigeon. So Pierre, André wakes up. He's in a hospital bed or whatnot like that. He's sitting there and everything. There's other soldiers and whatnot there. I can't remember if some guy brings him by a medal or whatnot. But then you play as the mom, and then you kind of mom strut your way through the hospital, and you come up there and everything like that, and you come to talk, and I think he kind of explains like, hey, Pierre didn't make it or whatnot like that, and so on there. And you can kind of tell that there's a bed next to it, which once again, I think if you got the gold watch, Pierre is probably there right next to you at the super happy ending. Yep. And so instead, like, it goes there, and then it cuts, your guy kind of falls back to sleep. And then you wake up, and it's literally like raining like fire and everything in there and so on like that. And it's like hellscape. Like, for once, it literally turns Silent Hill. Like, not like war scary. Yeah. It's like he's literally having a nightmare and so on like that. And so I can't remember if you pick up Pierre, but you're thinking of Pierre the whole time, and you're running out, and then you try to escape the hospital, and then it cuts back to like black, and then all of a sudden there's literally like a little small cutscene of this German gorilla running at you like full on in front of the screen. It's like, holy Jesus.
Interesting.
Yeah, like, and so that was kind of like the ending that I got there. And then, of course, you probably got the text and stuff like that, where it says like, this many soldiers died and so on like that. The only thing I will say is the text does the thing where like it kind of like it ends on a really nice word, I think, where it's like, like. And then the guy tries to drive it home like 2 more times. Like, okay, pump the brakes, buddy. We got the metaphor the first time. Because it's like one of those ones like, like in the soldiers, they returned back and so on like that. But the war truly wasn't over and stuff. And then it goes to like another thing. It's like, yeah, the war, it wasn't a physical one. It was a mental one.
Right.
And they never won. It's like, I got it. I got it the first couple times. Like, I get it. But you drove it home really good. And then you kind of worked it a couple times. But so that's it. And I'm guessing really the one thing that separates the super happy ending is that gold watch.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's like super happy is like you get the gold watch, like everything's great, like you're like on a yacht and everything.
No, because I'll explain. So I took some time. So I finished the game this morning. One quick brief caveat: the ending of Act 6. I was playing deep last night. Right, it's 11:30 at night last night. I am an hour and a half past my last save. I don't have any more saves. And again, this is what I mentioned in the beginning of the episode, right? At this point in the game, I have 1 health tick. I have no saves. I'm praying to God that by the time I get to the next section, once I unlock the final door of Act 6 and move into the last section, that there would be a save point there, right? Thank God there was. There was 2 ink ribbons in there. Cool. Got the save. Went to bed. Woke up this morning, finished the game. So after completing it, I leave today to go watch some my niece's t-ball softball games and whatnot, and like while I was there, like I threw an earbud in and I was like watching and listening to like the various other endings that could happen. I want to mention a couple of them because I haven't watched all of them because again, mentioning that there's I think a total of 9 total endings in this game. 2 of them that I'm aware of. So very similar to your ending, right? So you do the battle, you pick up your brother, you take him to the med tents and whatnot. But in this particular scenario, and God knows the events that led up to this or like the pathing that happened, to get this story ending. But André brings Pierre into the med tents. He lays him down on the stretcher. Pierre's still alive at this point, and the medic has now come in and is talking to you about your brother. The medic's basically like, his legs are damaged. We need to take them off. And then it's Andre's responsibility. And it's just like this still, again, it's just one of those images of just his eyeball. And it's just violently shaking and going bloodshot and stuff, like as he's hacking his brother's legs off, and then so Pierre can die right there, by taking on the surgery or not. The best ending in this game, according to what I was seeing and have read, the best possible ending in this game is that both brothers live, but André has extreme PTSD, which is what you experienced in that hospital room of him, freaking out and the gorilla coming in and all that, right? So,
which I don't know why it always reminds me of like that Team America thing where like when he thinks back to like that family outing and stuff, and it just shows the family picture, and all you just hear is like,
yep. Yeah, because I saw it in the video earlier and I thought it was hilarious. I was like, "What the fuck is that?"
Well, it threw me off because it was like that was like the game was so realistic all of a sudden, and then you get this weird Silent Hill nightmare, and then for some reason, like, am I gonna fight gorillas in like the mercenaries mode? Like, what's going on here?
Right. So André gets PTSD and Pierre returns back as an amputee. That's the best possible ending in the game. Another really interesting one that should have happened to me, and I don't know what I did to trigger the way that my ending happened with both of them ending up in the tunnel, me killing Pierre, and then, presumably André just fucking starves to death, I don't know. Is that there's an ending that's called cowardice or something like that. So,
well, was yours? I thought yours was the coward ending.
No, so mine here, I'll pull them real quick. So my ending says trapped B. Yours was Shell Shock A.
Okay.
So this particular ending of Cowardice, and again, there's an A and B, and I don't know the difference between the two, but basically what happens is like Pierre dies. You do the battle. So I think if you skip the first two battles and you do the final battle, Pierre dies in the tunnel, and then you get brought out by the lieutenant to a very, like, after the battle's over, he brings you over, he ties you up, he throws a blindfold over you, and you get shot down by a firing squad.
Oh, so you get that. So that's the super bad ending. You know what I actually think makes the A and B is the pigeon. I think that might be what triggers that.
It could be. It totally could be. But again, you know, like, I mean, so, you know, there's a handful of scenarios for, you know, like the endings that we properly got versus what I've just seen. But the replayability of this game, granted it's long, it's a very, very long game, but with the New Game Plus things that you were telling me about, because I need to go and just like start my New Game Plus run and see what the differences really are. But having your inventory, having your, you know, like your weapons and your, you know, health upgrades and all this type of stuff, because there's an achievement that I saw that's like beat the game in under 3.5 hours, and I'm like, there's no way on a first run, there's no way you can do that. So I think that the replayability of this game will continually have me play this game. I can see myself playing this game probably once a year for forever. It's kind of the same way I treat like Metal Gear Solid, you know, like, I think that this is a survival horror. It will turn into a classic eventually if more people are aware and can actually sit through and play through the totality of it. Because I think like the number one thing that this game did for me is that it just completely took me by surprise on its length and content that is actually in the game. I went into this fully expecting a 4 to 6 hour Crow Country experience, you know, like, and by the time that you had caught up to me when I was in chapter 3, and then you succeeded, you like went past me in chapter 3 or whatever. And by this point, like I had already dropped about 6 hours into the game, and I was like, Spence, I don't think that, you know, the first time when you first started playing your day one, I was like, I think this game's a hell of a lot longer than we think it is. And then you commented on it when you got through chapter 2 into chapter 3, like, yeah, this game is fucking long. It's like 3 to 4 hours per chapter. Like, Jesus. So stellar game. Stellar experience.
Well, you know, and I think it's kind of like Resident Evil 4, because Resident Evil 4, I remember that when that game first came out, I think my first run was almost like 20 hours. And I remember that being like, that was like, whoa, because mostly it was like 10 hours was kind of like your first run, give or take, on that type of game. It was like, wow, 20 hours, jeez. You know, but you can technically beat Resident Evil 4 in under 3 hours. Oh, yeah. You know what I mean? So I think it's the same way with this one. The one thing I will say is that the New Game Plus, because I just kind of turned it on to take a look at it, was like, it's got the phenomenal one. Like, I wish more games had this, where it's like, you have all your upgraded health and stamina. You keep every single one of your items. It's not like a key item. So you have all your extra health, all your extra ammo, all your upgrades, all your perks, and all that kind of stuff. You have your full inventory. I think that's going to actually make the biggest difference in time saving, is because that was, in a sense, the upside of this is because you could literally start with a full inventory, so you could just load up on all those key items. You could just take, you know, a gun and just kind of have the ammo. And in the very beginning of the game, you'd probably be taking guys out with like one-shotting them with the pistol. Right. You know what I mean? Because old Smokey gives you that good pistol that I have not, you know, used yet. And I can see where it actually could be kind of fun to do, you know, the second round of this and just see kind of, you know, maybe not like try to speed run, but just to see how fast it kind of goes by and so on. But yeah, it's one of those ones that length of the game is one of those ones that kind of makes you feel like, I'll come back to this in a second for sure. You know what I mean? It's not like Dino Crisis 2 where you're like, hey, yeah, just put another round in. Yeah, sure, why not? Perfect. You know, no, this is one of those ones where it's like, it was a lot to take in, but like, and that's not saying it's a bad thing. I think it's really good. It's really well put together. And it captures just so much stuff, you know, in that, you know, whole time period, which it doesn't feel like it really kind of ever like, you know, ends up kind of doing the same old over and over. It's like each act changes. You know, you get the different locations and so on like that. It opens up new areas. There's a lot of different variety of enemies to fight and so on like that. There's just so much stuff going on in here that I think it is one of those ones that one of the top tier of all the indie horror games we've ever played.
And I will comment, I genuinely wish I would have played this last year, because like in terms of like game of the year, I genuinely think this might take it for me. Like even more so than like any of the other 2024 titles that I actually played last year, you know, that came out and whatnot. Like pretty much like had it in my head like Stalker 2 was going to be my game of the year from last year because I really, really love that game. But I love it for a lot of different reasons. You know, like this game in particular was, I don't know. Stalker 2 was like expected. I knew what to expect walking into this game. This game, I had no idea. I had no idea the amount of enjoyment. And again, I think it just boils down to that very first night of me playing, you know, like I just decided to pick it up because it was on sale, not really expecting to do it for the podcast. Like I knew we were going to play it eventually. I just wanted to just check it out, you know, play 30 minutes and just kind of see how it felt. But bro, that first kill that you have in that little arena, and I shot that screenshot to you and I text you and I was like, dude, we have to do this. And here we are with our longest episode to date. You know, like,
I know, because you just go on for days. The game's so long, we had to have a long episode.
Oh, dude, it's amazing. It's amazing what this guy has been able to pull off. And Spence and I just talked quite a bit after the fact too, after like getting either close to the end of the game or finishing the game, of like sequels. This guy could do any theater of war, any storyline, anything like within this like game design would be amazing. You know, we talked about Vietnam. I think this game in Vietnam would just kill it. You know, just Conscript 2, you know. You know, like whatever.
Conscript 2 Vietnam would actually be just the way to go, because just like World War One, where there's not very many World War One games, there's not enough Vietnam games either too. There's definitely more than there is World War One, but like that is like a perfect area for all kinds of scary stuff to happen. You know what I mean? Especially if you had to go in and you had to, go into like the dens and everything like that with the dark lights and everything. You know, and investigate that, and then you have guys running at you like full speed with bayonets and so on, yelling. Yeah, there's so much to be had there.
Well, and similar to like we talked about at the end of Alone in the Dark, you know, where it's like I wish they would have played into the dark mechanics more and like have like an insanity meter and blah blah blah. Like if this game had something semi-similar to that, you know, like play into the PTSD side of it and the hallucinations and, you know, stuff like that, then you can get like a bit wacky with it within reason, you know, to where it's not ghouls and goblins and whatnot, but it's like you're hallucinating soldiers. You're, you know, like whatever, you know, like whatever the scenario may be. There's a lot that they could play with here.
Yeah, no, it definitely opens the doors for a lot more ways you can go about it. And as I said, like I just kind of thought about like, it's just like, there's a lot of cool stuff here that's kind of built up that like a sequel just would add even more dialed in, gameplay, and you all the little minor rough edges we might have talked about in here, that they could be straightened up just like pretty, much in a sequel that would be like, the game could be almost running flawlessly.
100%. Yeah, I am vastly impressed by this game. And again, like I said, I genuinely think at this point, like, I mean, granted it's in retrospect now, but like if I would have played this in 24, I think this easily would have been my game of the year. Like, easy.
Yeah, I think it's definitely one of those ones. The 2024 is a great year because you have that and Crow Country all at the same time. But yeah, Conscript's one of those ones. You can go out and you can literally get it on like anything. It's on, PC, it's on Switch, it's on PlayStation and Xbox, so that's the kind of the cool thing. There's even a little bit of DLC for it and so on. The version that I bought on Switch just kind of came with it, so it had like a couple extra costumes and so on like that, just for added fun. And
it's actually reasonably priced, I should say. Full price, $20. 100%.
Yeah,
100%. Like I got it on sale for I think $13 or something. I got like $7 off, and like, no doubt, I would pay I would pay $40 for this game easily.
Yeah, I mean, there's even comments I saw on Steam where I liked what the guy said. Is like, he's like, I bought the DLC. I'm not even going to use the DLC. I just like the game that much that I want the guy to have more money.
Yep.
It's like, that's how it is. But I thought it was one of those ones. It's one of the coolest experiences if you like classic survival horror, and especially if you like the original Metal Gear 1 and 2 games. There was some stuff I mentioned to you because I was thinking about like, there's some items from Metal Gear that I kind of was wondering if they're going to show up. Like the binoculars is the one I kind of said, because that's in the first and second one where you can see one screen ahead. I was kind of wondering if there's going to be something like that where you had like some binoculars that you could kind of see a little bit ahead just to kind of, but they never had stuff like that. Not saying that's not the worst thing. And the other one too that it seemed like would have been like an interesting is if you would have had either a tap like Solid Snake does, or like a whistle to like kind of bring guys in towards you. That was the other thing too. I'm kind of surprised that mechanic's not in there.
Or even like
because
throwables, like most new games have, like you throw the brick or you throw the bottle or like whatever.
Yeah,
distractions. That's interesting.
yeah, I just even thought just having just like the whistle just to bring the guy around and then smack him or whatever like that, would be kind of interesting. You do get a Molotov cocktail. It's kind of like one of those rare items that like you can make, but you don't have to. I chucked it at like one time at a couple guys, and it was like it's kind of cool because it like builds this big old fire that like keeps the guys from coming at you for a while.
Right,
It's
right.
And they'll run into it. I accidentally ran into it myself, but
So I saw this in some post-game reviews too. I think you can just take fuel and just dump it on the ground and just light it on fire. I'm pretty sure that's a mechanic in the game that you can do. Because I was seeing strategies where enemies AI pathing is not great in this game. I will say, like they just kind of run right at you, like. Yeah. But what I was watching this dude do is like he would dump fuel on the floor, he would light it on fire, he would get the attention of 3 or 4 soldiers. He would run around the fire, but by the time he got to the other side, they were pathing straight at him and would just run through the fire and kill him instantly. So like he was like just killing enemies that way. And I'm curious if that doubles over as burning the bodies too.
It probably does actually. I bet you it does. Mm-hmm. That would actually make for a better strategy for the fire.
Yeah. Because I saw him using it for rats too. Like he would like run dump fuel like in a tight condensed space or whatever. Dump fuel on the ground. Run to the rats, get their attention, run back, light it on fire, and then run past the fire, and then all the rats would light on fire as I was running by. So it's seemingly there's more that you can do than just burn bodies, So, and I'm curious how much more of that exists in this game, that I just haven't even taken into consideration yet. So.
Yeah, because there is a lot of extra stuff in there. I mean, because even like gun-wise, we didn't even talk about that. You get a bunch of extra guns, like not only the rifle, the pistol, and the shotgun, but you also get a machine gun. I guess we didn't mention that, but you get the Magnum too, and then you get variations of all the pistols and stuff, just like Resident Evil 4. So there's 2 types of shotguns, 2 types of rifles, I think 3 types of pistols, maybe 4. Yep. And then you even get like the Magnum, which I didn't use the Magnum till literally the last chapter because I was just like hoarding that ammo for when I needed it.
And they just call it the hand cannon.
Oh, and then I take that back. There is an extra item you get if you release the pigeon. The lieutenant dude threw me down a rocket launcher or a grenade launcher.
Oh, okay.
And so, like, I made sure I saved that because I didn't get on the other one, so I made sure I saved that so I'd have it on the New Game Plus.
Yeah.
You only have like 1 shell in it, so I just turned and shot at one guy. It's like boom.
Yep.
They just kind of like shooting the grenades out realistically, but Yeah, because this is one of those games too that'd be interesting too if they even had stuff where you could like eventually unlock if there was any unlimited ammo guns or anything like that. Because I didn't look up to see if there was anything like that, but because if you could have like an unlimited ammo gun, that would probably make for a fun speed run. Because then you'd have all your inventory space, so you don't have to worry about that. But But no. This might have been a long game and a little bit of a long episode, but it's a fun one to check out. There's a lot to be had here. As we said, if you like the World War I aesthetic, you like the Metal Gear Solid, and you like Resident Evil and all that stuff, mix in a little bit of Silent Hill. There's a lot to be had, and I can't wait to you give it another try, do the New Game Plus, because I think that's where it's going to really be even better almost.
Oh, yeah. I would love to do another episode on this again at some point in the future, just like as a New Game Plus type thing, just to see what the core differences are. I'd love to do that.
Yeah, just finally figure out what that stupid code is for the gold watch.
Yeah.
But till then, you can check out all the good Old Man Orange stuff on YouTube and all the other sites. I'm Spencer Scott Holmes.
And I am Cameron.
And we'll see you some other time.